The roses arrived at 3:47 p.m. on a Tuesday, and Evelyn Carter's perfectly ordered world shattered like glass. For 2 years, she'd been invisible, the trusted assistant who knew every secret, asked no questions, and never made waves. But the moment those blood-red flowers touched her desk, Adrian Vale's legendary control cracked wide open. What she thought was jealousy turned out to be something far more terrifying: fear. Because the roses weren't a gift, they were a warning. If you want to know how a bouquet of flowers can destroy everything, stay until the end. Hit that like button and comment what city you're watching from. I want to see how far this story travels. Evelyn Carter had learned long ago that invisibility was a superpower. In the gleaming fortress of Vale Industries' 53rd floor, where billion-dollar deals happened over handshakes and careers ended with a single phone call, being unremarkable was the only way to survive. She'd perfected the art over 2 years: the neutral smile, the efficient nod, the ability to anticipate needs before they were spoken. She was Adrian Vale's right hand, his gatekeeper, the woman who knew where all the bodies were buried, and she'd stayed alive precisely because she never, ever drew attention to herself. Until the roses arrived. The delivery came during the afternoon lull, when most of the executive floor had scattered to meetings or early martinis. Evelyn was reviewing quarterly reports, her desk a monument to ruthless organization, when the elevator chimed. The delivery man looked nervous. Everyone looked nervous on the 53rd floor. "Evelyn Carter?" he asked, clutching an arrangement so extravagant it barely fit through the door. She blinked. "Yes?" 24 blood-red roses arranged with mathematical precision in a crystal vase that probably cost more than her monthly rent. No card. No explanation. Just flowers that screamed everything her life wasn't supposed to be. Noticed, romantic, special. "There must be a mistake," she said. "No mistake, ma'am. Sign here." She signed with trembling fingers, already calculating the fallout. Office romances were forbidden at Vale Industries. Not by policy, but by unspoken law. Adrian Vale didn't tolerate distractions, complications, or anything that threatened the machine-like efficiency of his empire. And here she was, suddenly very, very complicated. The delivery man left. Evelyn stared at the roses, her pulse hammering against her ribs. They were beautiful, devastating, terrifying. She reached for the vase, searching for a card she knew wouldn't be there, when Adrian's office door opened. "Evelyn, I need the—" Adrian Vale stopped mid-sentence. For a man famous for his unshakable composure, the change in his expression was seismic. His jaw tightened. His gray eyes, usually cold and calculating, turned to flint. "What?" he said quietly. "Is that—" Evelyn's mouth went dry. She'd seen Adrian angry before. She'd seen him destroy competitors, fire executives, negotiate billion-dollar acquisitions without breaking a sweat. But she'd never seen him look at her like this, like she'd committed treason. "They just arrived," she said, hating how small her voice sounded. "I don't know who sent them." "You don't know." He crossed the space between them in 3 strides, moving with the controlled violence of a predator. "Someone sends you 24 roses to your office, and you don't know who. No card. No name. I swear, Adrian, I have no idea." "Don't!" The word cracked like a whip. "Don't lie to me, Evelyn. Not you." The unfairness of it stung. In 2 years, she'd never lied to him, never stolen, never gossiped, never betrayed a single confidence. She'd been loyal to the point of self-erasure, and now he was looking at her like she was a stranger. "I'm not lying," she said, lifting her chin. "Check the delivery receipt if you don't believe me. There's no sender information." Something flickered across his face. Uncertainty, maybe, or calculation. He picked up the vase, examining it with the intensity he usually reserved for contracts. Crystal. Hand-cut. European. His voice was ice. "Roses from Ecuador. Someone spent at least $3,000 on this arrangement." Evelyn's stomach dropped. 3,000? This isn't some lovesick intern, Evelyn. He set the vase down with controlled precision. "This is a message." "A message? Adrian, I don't understand. Who have you been seeing?" "No one. I don't date. You know I don't have time for—" "Who have you talked to recently? New contacts? Old friends reaching out?" Her mind raced through the past few weeks. Work, home, the occasional grocery store trip. Her life was pathetically small, designed to orbit Adrian's world without friction. No one, she repeated. Adrian, what is this really about? He turned away, his shoulders rigid beneath his tailored suit. For a long moment, he said nothing, and Evelyn watched the man who controlled everything struggle for control. Go home, he finally said. What? Take the rest of the day. Go home. Lock your doors. Fear spiked through her chest. You're scaring me. Good. He turned back, and the look in his eyes made her breath catch. Not anger anymore. Something worse. You should be scared. If someone's targeting you, targeting? Adrian, they're flowers. Nothing about you is random, Evelyn. His voice dropped, taking on an edge she'd never heard before. You think I don't know what you are to this company? To me? You're the only person in this building I trust, the only one who knows where the leverage is, who the players are, which secrets could burn everything down. She stared at him, something hot and painful expanding in her chest. I'm your assistant. You're more than that, and we both know it. He moved closer, close enough that she could smell his cologne, cedar, and something darker. Which means anyone who wants to hurt me knows exactly how valuable you are. The words hung between them, heavy with implications neither of them had ever acknowledged. For 2 years, they'd maintained perfect professional distance. But the truth had always been there, humming beneath every interaction, every late night, every moment when his hand brushed hers passing documents. She mattered to him. And that made her a target. I'll increase security, he continued, already pulling out his phone. Private detail, driver, new access codes for your apartment. Adrian, stop. She caught his wrist, the first time she'd ever touched him without the excuse of paperwork. You're overreacting. It's probably just a mistake or someone with a crush. Don't. The word was barely a whisper, but it silenced her. Don't underestimate this. Don't underestimate what people will do for power. His hand, still caught in her grip, turned, his fingers threading through hers. The gesture was so unexpected, so intimate, that Evelyn forgot to breathe. I can't protect you if you don't take this seriously, he said. Protect me from what? What aren't you telling me? Before he could answer, his phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen and his expression went from concerned to lethal. What? Evelyn asked. He showed her the phone. A text message from an unknown number. Beautiful flowers for a beautiful woman. Tell Adrian I said hello. Evelyn's blood turned to ice. Who? Victor Calder. Adrian's voice could have cut steel. It's Victor fucking Calder. The name meant nothing to her, but Adrian's reaction told her everything she needed to know. This wasn't a business rival. This was something personal, something dangerous. Who is he? She whispered. Adrian's jaw worked. My half-brother. The revelation detonated in the space between them. Half-brother. In 2 years, Adrian had never mentioned family. Evelyn had assumed he was like her, alone, self-made, too focused on survival to maintain messy connections. But apparently, he'd just been hiding something. You have a brother, she said slowly. And you never mentioned it. Not a brother. A competitor. Adrian released her hand, already moving toward his office. Come with me. Now. She followed on shaking legs, her mind spinning. The roses, the text, the way Adrian had looked at the flowers like they were a bomb. His office was a study in controlled power, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Manhattan, minimalist furniture that cost more than most people's cars, and absolutely nothing personal. No photos, no mementos, just clean lines and cold efficiency. He pulled up something on his computer, then turned the screen toward her. Victor Calder's face stared back. He looked nothing like Adrian. Where Adrian was all sharp angles and controlled intensity, Victor was smooth, polished, conventionally handsome in a way that probably photographed well. The kind of man who smiled in business magazines and attended charity galas. He's your half-brother? Evelyn couldn't see the resemblance. Different mothers, same bastard father. Adrian's voice was clinical, but she heard the razor wire underneath. When our father died, he split the company. I got Vale Industries. Victor got Calder Holdings. We were supposed to stay in our lanes. But Victor doesn't like his lane, Tolk. He's been trying to absorb my assets for 5 years. Hostile takeovers, corporate espionage, poaching key employees. Adrian's eyes met hers, and now, apparently, he's interested in you. Evelyn's legs suddenly felt unsteady. She sank into one of the leather chairs, her mind racing. Why would he send me flowers? Because he knows exactly what you mean to me. The words landed like a physical touch. Evelyn's heart stuttered. Adrian, he's been watching us, Evelyn, probably for months, tracking patterns, looking for weakness. He began pacing, the controlled movement of a caged predator. He knows you have access to everything: financial records, strategic plans, contracts, confidential communications. I would never... I know that. But Victor doesn't care about loyalty. He cares about leverage. Adrian stopped in front of her, his expression carved from granite. The roses aren't romantic, they're tactical. He's announcing that he knows you exist, that he's been watching, and that he's coming for what's mine. Mine. The possessive pronoun hit her like electricity. Not what's valuable to the company, what's mine. So what do we do? She asked. We? Adrian's eyebrow lifted. There's no we in this, Evelyn. You're going into protective custody until... No! He blinked. In 2 years, she'd never contradicted him, never pushed back. She'd been the perfect assistant, agreeable and efficient and utterly compliant. But something had shifted the moment those roses arrived. Excuse me? His voice dropped to a dangerous register. I said no. Evelyn stood, meeting his eyes. I'm not running. I'm not hiding. If Victor Calder thinks I'm your weakness, then we use that. Absolutely not. Listen to me. No, you listen. Adrian closed the distance between them, and suddenly she could feel the heat radiating from his body. This man is dangerous. He doesn't make empty threats. If he's targeting you, it's because he thinks he can use you against me, and he's right. Then let him think that, she said, her pulse hammering. Let him believe I'm vulnerable. Let him believe I might be willing to betray you, and when he makes his move, we destroy him. Adrian stared at her like he'd never seen her before. You have no idea what you're suggesting. Then explain it to me. You said I'm more than an assistant, so stop treating me like I'm breakable. Something dangerous flickered in his eyes. You want the truth? Yes. Fine. He moved even closer, close enough that she had to tilt her head back to maintain eye contact. Victor doesn't just want my company. He wants to humiliate me, break me, and the best way to do that is to prove that everyone I trust can be bought. I can't be bought. Everyone can be bought, Evelyn. It's just a question of price. The cynicism in his voice cut her. You really believe that? I've seen it too many times not to. Then you don't know me as well as you think you do. They stood there, close enough to kiss, the air between them crackling with 2 years of unspoken tension. Evelyn could see the war happening behind his eyes. Control versus instinct, logic versus something raw. If I let you do this, he finally said, you follow my rules, my security, my plan. No improvisation, no heroics. Agreed. And if at any point I think you're in real danger, you're out. Non-negotiable. Fine. He searched her face, looking for cracks in her resolve. She knew what he'd find. The same steel that had gotten her through foster care, through state college, through every door that had been slammed in her face. She hadn't built this life by being delicate. Why? He asked quietly. Why risk this? Because you matter to me. Because 2 years of keeping my distance hasn't changed the fact that I'd walk through fire for you. Because I'm already in too deep to walk away. But she couldn't say any of that. Because I'm tired of being invisible, she said instead. Adrian's expression shifted. Surprise, maybe, or recognition. His hand came up, almost touching her face before he caught himself. You've never been invisible to me, he said. The confession hung between them, weighted with everything they'd never allowed themselves to acknowledge. Evelyn's breath caught. Then his phone buzzed again, shattering the moment. Another text from Victor. Dinner tomorrow night, Cipriani, 8 p.m. Just the two of us, she'll know where. Adrian's face went cold. He's inviting you to dinner, so I'll go. The hell you will. Adrian, this is exactly what we need. He's making contact. If I refuse, he'll know we're on to him. And if you go, you're walking into a trap. Only if I go alone. Evelyn pulled out her phone, already thinking 3 moves ahead. You said you wanted a plan. Here's the plan. I accept the invitation, I go to dinner, I let him think I'm curious, maybe even tempted, and you have people watching every second. It's too dangerous. It's the only play we have. She met his eyes. Unless you have a better idea? Adrian's jaw clenched. She could see him running scenarios, calculating risks, looking for alternatives, but they both knew she was right. Victor had made the first move. Now they had to respond. Fine, he finally bit out, but we do this my way. Full surveillance team, tracking device, panic button, and I'm in the restaurant the entire time. He'll recognize you. I'll be in the kitchen, the back office, I don't care, but I'm not letting you sit across from that psychopath without backup. Despite the fear curling through her stomach, Evelyn felt something else too, a strange, fierce joy. For 2 years, she'd been a satellite in Adrian's orbit, useful but distant. Now suddenly, they were in this together, partners. Okay, she said. Tomorrow night, Cipriani, we end this. Adrian's hand finally made contact, his fingers grazing her cheek with devastating gentleness. If anything happens to you, it won't. If it does, his voice cracked, just barely. Evelyn, I can't. She covered his hand with hers, holding it against her face. I know. The words were inadequate, but they held everything. I know you're scared. I know this matters. I know we've been pretending this is just professional for too long. His thumb brushed across her cheekbone, and for one breathless second, she thought he might kiss her. But Adrian Vale hadn't built an empire by giving in to impulse. He stepped back, the shutters coming down over his expression. Go home. Pack a bag. My security team will pick you up in an hour. You're staying at my penthouse until this is over. Adrian, non-negotiable. His voice was back to its usual authoritative clip. If Victor's watching you, your apartment isn't safe. My building has the best security in the city. Won't that look suspicious? Your assistant suddenly moving in? Let him think whatever he wants. Your safety is more important than optics. Evelyn nodded, her mind already spinning with the implications. Adrian's penthouse, close quarters, no professional distance to hide behind. This was either going to solve everything or destroy them both. I'll need to respond to the text, she said. What should I say? Adrian pulled out his phone, typed something, then showed her the screen. I'll be there. How did you get my number? It was perfect. Curious but cautious. Exactly what Victor would expect from someone who didn't know she was a pawn in a bigger game. Send it from your phone, Adrian said. We need him to think you're acting alone. Evelyn typed the message, her fingers steady despite the adrenaline flooding her system. The moment she hit send, there was no going back. Victor's response came within seconds. I make it my business to know important people. See you tomorrow, beautiful. Her stomach turned. He's confident. He thinks he's already won. Adrian's smile was razor sharp. That's his first mistake. Well, the security team arrived at Evelyn's apartment exactly 1 hour later, 2 no-nonsense professionals who swept her building like they were expecting snipers. She packed quickly, throwing clothes and toiletries into a bag, while one of them checked her windows and the other installed new locks. Is this really necessary? She asked. The woman, tall, competent, with the build of someone who could probably bench press a car, gave her a flat look. Mr. Vale doesn't take chances with people he values. Neither do we. People he values. Evelyn wondered how many other people had warranted this level of protection. Probably none. The drive to Adrian's building was surreal. She'd been to his penthouse before, of course, delivering documents, picking up signatures, the occasional emergency briefing, but she'd never stayed, never crossed that line between professional and personal. Now that line was dissolving fast. The penthouse occupied the entire top floor of a building in Tribeca, all glass and steel and architectural ambition. Adrian was waiting when she arrived, changed out of his suit into dark slacks and a shirt with the sleeves rolled up. He looked almost human. Your room is ready, he said, gesturing toward the hallway. East wing, private bathroom. Security feeds monitor all entry points, but not inside the apartment. You'll have privacy. Thank you. Awkwardness descended. They'd spent countless hours together in offices and conference rooms, but this was different. This was his home, his private space, and she was invading it. Are you hungry? He asked. I can order something. I'm fine. You didn't eat lunch. The observation shouldn't have surprised her. Adrian noticed everything, but the fact that he'd been paying attention to whether she'd eaten felt significant. Neither did you, she countered. His mouth twitched, almost a smile. I'll order Thai. You like the curry from that place on Hudson. He disappeared into the kitchen, leaving Evelyn standing in the middle of his living room, feeling completely unmoored. The space was beautiful but impersonal, like a high-end hotel. No photos, no clutter, nothing that revealed who Adrian Vale actually was beneath the armor. She found herself drifting toward the windows, looking out at the Manhattan skyline. Somewhere out there, Victor Calder was planning his next move, and tomorrow night she'd be sitting across from him, pretending to be exactly what he thought she was. Vulnerable, exploitable, disloyal. Second thoughts? Adrian's voice came from behind her. She hadn't heard him approach. No, she said, just thinking about what to wear tomorrow. Wear something that makes you feel powerful. She turned. Why? Because Victor will try to make you feel small, off balance. He'll use charm like a weapon, make you doubt yourself. Adrian moved to stand beside her, their reflections ghostly in the darkened glass. Don't let him. How do you know what he'll do? Because we had the same father, same training, same lessons in manipulation. His voice went distant. The only difference is I chose to build something real. Victor only knows how to take. Evelyn studied his reflection. You never talk about your father. There's nothing to say. He was a bastard who saw children as investments. When Victor and I were young, he used to pit us against each other. Competitions, tests, games designed to make us fight for his approval. Adrian's jaw tightened. Victor never grew out of it. And you? I learned that approval from men like that isn't worth having. The raw honesty in his voice made her chest ache. She'd always known Adrian was guarded, but she'd attributed it to professionalism. Now she understood it was survival. I'm sorry, she said quietly. Don't be. It made me who I am. He turned to face her. But it also means I know exactly how dangerous Victor is. He doesn't see people as people, Evelyn. We're all just pieces on a board. And when pieces stop being useful, he didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. I can handle him, Evelyn said. I know you can. That's what terrifies me. The words hung between them, loaded with implications. Before Evelyn could respond, the building intercom buzzed, their food arriving. They ate at Adrian's dining table, the conversation carefully neutral. Business updates, market analysis, safe topics that kept them from acknowledging the elephant in the room. But every time their eyes met, Evelyn felt it, the pull, the recognition, the sense that something fundamental had shifted and there was no going back. After dinner, Adrian disappeared into his study to make calls, and Evelyn retreated to the guest room. It was elegant and impersonal, like everything else in the penthouse. She unpacked mechanically, her mind already on tomorrow night. She was going to sit across from a dangerous man and pretend to be someone she wasn't. The thought should have terrified her. Instead, she felt grimly determined. She was done being invisible, done being underestimated. If Victor Calder thought she was a weakness to exploit, he was about to learn a very expensive lesson. She just had to survive long enough to teach it to him. Sleep didn't come easily. Evelyn lay in the unfamiliar bed, listening to the city sounds filtering through the windows, and tried not to think about Adrian 3 doors down. Tried not to remember the way he'd touched her face, the way he'd said mine. Around 2 a.m., she gave up and padded into the kitchen for water. The penthouse was dark except for a light in Adrian's study. She should have gone back to bed. She knocked instead. Come in. He was at his desk, surrounded by papers and screens, looking like he hadn't slept in days, which, knowing Adrian, he probably hadn't. Can't sleep? He asked. Nervous about tomorrow, I guess. You can still back out. No, I can't. She moved into the room, drawn by some invisible thread. We're past that now. Adrian leaned back in his chair, studying her. You're different tonight. Different how? Bolder. 2 years you've worked for me, and you've never once pushed back. Now suddenly you're arguing, making demands, walking into my study in the middle of the night. Evelyn's cheeks heated. She was wearing pajamas, nothing inappropriate, just shorts and a tank top, but under his gaze she felt exposed. "The roses changed things," she said. "How?" "They made me visible. And once you're visible," she shrugged, "there's no point hiding anymore." Adrian stood, moving around the desk with predatory grace. "Is that what you've been doing? Hiding? Haven't you?" The question landed. She saw it in the way his expression flickered, the way his hands flexed at his sides. "Yes," he said quietly. "For 2 years, I've been hiding what you are to me." Evelyn's heart stopped. Started again, too fast. "What am I to you?" He moved closer, close enough that she could see the exhaustion in his eyes, the fear he'd been carrying since the roses arrived. "Everything I can't afford to want," he said. "Everything I've been trying not to need." The confession broke something open in her chest. For 2 years, she'd convinced herself that her feelings were one-sided, that Adrian saw her as competent, useful, but ultimately replaceable. She'd been lying to herself. "Adrian, tomorrow night, when you sit across from Victor, he's going to offer you things." Adrian's voice was rough. "Money, power, freedom from this job, from me. And you need to know that if you want those things, if you want out, you can have them. No strings, no consequences. I'll give you whatever you need to disappear and start over somewhere safe." Evelyn stared at him, understanding dawning. "You think I might actually betray you?" "No, but I think you should have the choice." His hand came up, cradling her face with devastating gentleness. "I won't trap you, Evelyn. Not in this job. Not in my life. If tomorrow night you realize you want something different, something better." She kissed him. It wasn't planned, wasn't strategic. It was pure instinct. 2 years of wanting compressed into a single moment of clarity. For a heartbeat, Adrian froze. Then he kissed her back with the kind of fierce intensity she'd only ever seen him apply to business, claiming her mouth like he was negotiating the deal of his life. And maybe he was. His hands tangled in her hair. Her fingers clutched his shirt. They kissed like people who'd been starving, desperate, and honest, and absolutely done with pretending. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Adrian rested his forehead against hers. "That was a terrible idea," he said. "Probably. It changes everything." "I know. If Victor finds out, let him." Evelyn pulled back just enough to meet his eyes. "Let him see that I choose you. Let him understand that I'm not for sale, not for leverage, not for any amount of money or power. I'm exactly where I want to be." Adrian's expression did something complicated. Hope and fear and hunger all at once. "You have no idea what you're choosing," he said. "Then show me." The challenge hung between them. For a moment, she thought he might pull away, retreat into control and caution. Instead, he kissed her again, slower this time, thorough and claiming and absolutely certain. And Evelyn kissed him back, knowing that tomorrow night everything would change. But tonight, in this moment, they were finally being honest. Finally choosing each other. Whatever came next, they'd face it together. Morning came too quickly, and not quickly enough. Evelyn woke in the guest room, sunlight streaming through unfamiliar windows, and for a disorienting moment couldn't remember where she was. Then it all came rushing back. The roses, Victor's text, the kiss that had rewritten every rule she'd lived by for 2 years. She touched her lips, half convinced she'd dreamed it. But when she emerged from her room, showered and dressed in yesterday's clothes, Adrian was in the kitchen making coffee with the focused intensity he applied to everything. He looked up when she entered, and the heat in his eyes told her it had been very, very real. "Good morning," he said, his voice carrying notes of things they couldn't say in daylight. "Morning?" She accepted the coffee mug he offered, their fingers brushing. The contact sent electricity up her arm. "Did you sleep?" "Some." A lie, judging by the shadows under his eyes. "I've been coordinating with the security team. Tonight's setup is extensive." "Right. Tonight." The dinner with Victor that suddenly felt far more complicated now that everything between her and Adrian had shifted. "Walk me through it," she said, settling onto one of the bar stools. Adrian pulled out his tablet, all business now, though his body angled toward hers in a way that felt unconscious and possessive. "Cipriani will have 4 of my people inside. 2 servers, 1 bartender, 1 diner. You'll have a tracking device in your earring and a panic button built into your bracelet. If you press it, my team moves in immediately." "What about you?" I'll be in the manager's office with full audio and video surveillance. His jaw tightened. I wanted to be closer, but Victor knows my face. If he spots me, the whole thing falls apart. Evelyn studied the layout on the screen. Exit points marked in red, security positions in blue, sight lines mapped with precision. Adrian had turned this into a military operation. You're expecting trouble, she said. I'm expecting Victor to be Victor. He zoomed in on the table reservation. He's chosen the corner booth. Most privacy, farthest from exits. He wants you trapped in conversation. Or he just wants privacy for whatever pitch he's planning. Same thing. Adrian's finger traced the route from the entrance to the booth. You walk in, you're visible to the whole restaurant. Everyone will see you meeting him. That's intentional. He's marking territory, letting people know he can access my inner circle. The possessiveness in Adrian's voice sent heat through her chest. Your inner circle. Your people. Yours. So I play along, she said. I act interested but cautious. Let him think he's seducing me to his side. And you listen, really listen. Adrian looked up from the tablet, his gray eyes intense. Victor's ego is his weakness. He'll want to impress you, show off how clever he is. If we're lucky, he'll reveal something we can use. And if we're not lucky, then you smile, finish your wine, and leave. No heroics. No pushing for information that might make him suspicious. His hand covered hers on the counter. Your safety matters more than any intel we might gain. The words wrapped around her heart. She turned her hand over, threading her fingers through his. What if he asks about us? About you and me? Deny everything. You're my assistant, professional, loyal, nothing more. It should have been easy to say. It was the truth they'd lived for 2 years. But now, after last night, the lie tasted bitter. Adrian, I know. His thumb stroked across her knuckles. But if Victor thinks you matter to me personally, he won't try to turn you. He'll just eliminate you as a variable. And I can't... His voice cracked. I can't risk that. Evelyn squeezed his hand, understanding the impossible position they were in. To protect her, Adrian had to pretend she meant nothing, had to let his half-brother believe she was available, corruptible, worth pursuing. It was going to kill him. We should go over what he might offer, she said, forcing herself back to strategy. So I know how to respond. Adrian nodded, withdrawing his hand with visible reluctance. Money first. He'll start with a signing bonus, probably 7 figures. Enough to be life-changing, but not so much that it seems desperate. I refuse. Don't. Not immediately. He pulled up a document on his tablet. Financial records, she realized. Victor's financial records. Act interested but skeptical. Make him work for it. The more he invests in convincing you, the more he'll reveal. Evelyn scanned the numbers, her mind automatically cataloging patterns. He's been liquidating assets, converting everything to cash. Preparing for something big. Adrian's expression darkened. A hostile takeover attempt, probably. He'll need liquid capital to move fast. Of Vale Industries? Of everything I've built. He zoomed in on a series of transactions. These shell companies here. They've been buying up my suppliers, my distributors, anyone in my supply chain. He's trying to strangle me economically. The scope of it took her breath away. This wasn't just business rivalry. This was systematic destruction. Why? She asked. What did you do to make him hate you this much? Adrian was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was distant, aimed at ghosts she couldn't see. I existed, he said. That was my crime, being born first, having the name our father actually acknowledged. Victor spent his whole childhood watching his mother beg for scraps while I got everything. He met her eyes. He's not trying to beat me, Evelyn. He's trying to erase me. The raw pain in his voice made her want to cross the space between them and wrap herself around him until the old wound stopped bleeding. But she held still, sensing he needed to finish. Our father knew what he was doing, Adrian continued. He built the hatred between us deliberately, thought it would make us stronger, sharper. Instead, it just made Victor obsessed. His hands flattened on the counter. I've tried negotiating, tried offering him partnerships, mergers, ways we could both win. He doesn't want to win. He wants me to lose. Then we don't let him win, Evelyn said firmly. Tonight, I'll get you what you need, whatever it takes. Adrian's eyes snapped to hers, sharp with warning. No. Whatever you do, don't take risks for me. If the situation feels wrong, you walk. Adrian, promise me, Evelyn. He moved around the counter, gripping her shoulders. Promise me that if anything feels off, if he says anything that sounds like a threat, you leave immediately. She saw the fear beneath his control, the nightmare scenarios playing out behind his eyes. She was the one variable he couldn't manage, the one piece of this chess game he couldn't afford to lose. I promise, she said. But you have to promise me something too. What? That you'll trust me to handle this. Trust that I can read him, play him, and get out safely. She held his gaze. You've seen me manage difficult people for 2 years. Victor might be dangerous, but he's still just a man. And men like him always underestimate women. Something shifted in Adrian's expression, worry giving way to reluctant admiration. You're going to be brilliant tonight. I know. She smiled, letting confidence she only half felt color her voice. Now help me pick out something to wear that says intrigued but not desperate. Must. They spent the next hour reviewing every possible scenario, every question Victor might ask, every trap he might set. Adrian was thorough to the point of obsession, drilling her like she was preparing for combat, which, in a way, she was. By noon, Evelyn's head was spinning with contingencies and coded phrases and exit strategies. Adrian finally called a halt when she mixed up 2 of the security team's names for the 3rd time. You need a break, he said. And food. Real food. He ordered lunch from a bistro down the street, and they ate in his living room, a weirdly domestic moment in the middle of the chaos. Evelyn found herself studying him, memorizing details she'd never let herself notice before. The way he broke bread with his hands instead of using a knife. The small scar above his left eyebrow. The reader glasses he wore when reviewing documents, like he was doing now, scanning the security briefing one more time. You're staring, he said without looking up. I'm allowed to now. That got his attention. He set down the papers, removing the glasses, and the full force of his focus landed on her. Are you? He asked quietly. Allowed to? The question held layers. Are we doing this? Are we real? What happens after tonight, after Victor, after all of this is over? I don't know, Evelyn admitted. But I want to be. Adrian crossed the space between them, kneeling in front of where she sat on the couch. The position put them at eye level, stripped away the power dynamic that had defined them for so long. I'm not an easy man to be with, he said. I'm controlling, obsessive. I have enemies and trust issues and a bastard of a half-brother who apparently sends roses to intimidate people. Despite everything, Evelyn laughed. When you put it that way, you're quite a catch. His mouth twitched, almost a real smile. I'm serious, Evelyn. My life is complicated, dangerous. The people I care about become targets. I'm already a target, she pointed out. The roses prove that. Because of me. Because of what you are to me. Then we might as well make it official. She cupped his face, feeling the tension in his jaw. I'm not afraid of complicated, Adrian. I've been living in complicated for 2 years, pretending I didn't feel what I feel. At least now we're being honest. He turned his head, pressing a kiss to her palm. After tonight, after we deal with Victor, we'll figure out what this is. Deal, she whispered. They stayed like that for a moment, foreheads touching, breathing the same air. Then Adrian's phone buzzed, shattering the intimacy. He checked the screen and swore softly. What? Evelyn asked. Victor changed the reservation, private dining room instead of the main floor. Her stomach dropped. That's not good. No. Adrian was already texting his security team. Private room means no witnesses, no ambient coverage. My people won't be able to position themselves as effectively. Should we cancel? And let him know we're onto him? Adrian shook his head. No, but we adjust. He pulled up a new layout, the private dining room, smaller and more intimate than the main restaurant. This is going to be trickier. Audio will be fine, but video angles are limited. You'll be more isolated. Evelyn studied the layout, her pulse quickening. Private room, isolated. All the warning signs her instincts were screaming about. But this was also an opportunity. People revealed more when they thought they were alone. It's fine, she said, with more confidence than she felt. Better, even. He'll be more honest if he thinks we can't be overheard. Adrian looked at her like she was proposing to walk into a lion's den wearing a meat suit. I don't like this. You don't have to like it. You just have to trust me. I do trust you. It's Victor I don't trust. Then make sure your team is ready to move fast if things go sideways. She stood, needing to do something with the nervous energy flooding her system. What time should I start getting ready? We leave at 7. That gives us time to position everyone before you arrive. 6 hours. 6 hours to prepare for the most dangerous performance of her life. She spent the afternoon in controlled preparation, shower, hair, makeup applied with precision. The dress she'd chosen was black, elegant without being seductive, professional without being boring. She looked like exactly what she was supposed to be. Adrian Vale's trusted assistant, competent and poised, and possibly corruptible. The tracking earrings were beautiful, diamond studs that looked expensive but not flashy. The panic bracelet was thin silver, unremarkable, except for the tiny button hidden in the clasp. When she emerged from the guest room at 6:30, Adrian was waiting in the living room, dressed in dark slacks and a sweater. Casual, like he wasn't about to spend the evening watching surveillance feeds and imagining worst-case scenarios. He froze when he saw her. Too much? She asked, suddenly uncertain. No. His voice was rough. Perfect. You look perfect. Heat flooded her cheeks. It's just a dress. It's not the dress. He moved closer, his eyes tracking over her like he was memorizing every detail. It's you. You look like someone who could bring empires to their knees. That's the plan, isn't it? She tried for lightness, but her voice came out breathless. Adrian cupped her face, tilting her chin up. Last chance to back out. Not happening. Stubborn woman. You knew that when you hired me. He kissed her then, slow and thorough and edged with desperation. When they broke apart, his forehead rested against hers. If anything happens, he started. It won't. But if it does, I need you to know. He pulled back, his eyes fierce. These 2 years, working with you, watching you handle everything I threw at you with grace and brilliance, you've been the best part of my life, Evelyn. The only uncomplicated good thing in a world full of complications. Her throat tightened. Adrian, I'm not saying this to scare you. I'm saying it because I should have said it months ago, years ago. His thumb brushed her cheekbone. You matter, not just to the company, to me. Evelyn blinked back tears that would ruin her makeup. You matter to me too, which is why I'm going to do this right. Get the information we need. Come back safe, and then we're going to destroy Victor Calder and figure out how to be together without the whole world ending. Adrian's smile was small but real. Ambitious plan. I learned from the best. The car service arrived at 7 sharp, a black sedan with windows tinted dark enough to hide anything. Evelyn slid into the back seat, and Adrian followed, maintaining professional distance even though every cell in her body wanted to reach for him. The drive to Cipriani was silent. Evelyn watched Manhattan blur past, her mind running through the plan one more time. Listen, observe. Let Victor reveal himself. Don't take unnecessary risks. Get out safe. Simple. Except nothing about this was simple. The car pulled up to a service entrance 2 blocks from the restaurant. Adrian's security team materialized from nowhere. The tall woman from yesterday and a man built like a tank. Positions are set, the woman said. Audio check. Evelyn touched her earring, and a tiny voice filled her ear. Clear reception. We have you. Adrian stepped closer, his hand finding hers in the space between their bodies. You remember the signals? Touch my necklace if I need you to move in. Press the bracelet if there's immediate danger. Touch my earring if I need extraction but no emergency. And if he tries to leave with you, I refuse. If he insists I trigger the bracelet. She squeezed his hand. Adrian, I've got this. He looked like he wanted to argue. Instead, he pulled her close, pressing a hard kiss to her forehead. 30 minutes. If you're not out in 30 minutes, I'm coming in. Make it 45. I need time to actually get information. 35. Final offer. Despite her nerves, Evelyn smiled. Deal. She walked the 2 blocks to Cipriani's main entrance alone, her heels clicking against the sidewalk. The restaurant glowed like a jewel box, all warm light and expensive ambiance. The kind of place where deals worth millions happened over wine that cost thousands. The hostess greeted her with the kind of smile reserved for people with platinum credit cards. "Miss Carter, Mr. Calder is expecting you, right this way." The walk through the main dining room felt like walking through water. Everything slow and crystalline and too bright. Evelyn felt eyes tracking her, assessing her, wondering who she was and why Victor Calder wanted to see her. Let them wonder. The private dining room was at the back, tucked behind a curtain of frosted glass. The hostess opened the door and Evelyn stepped through. Victor Calder rose from the table like a predator scenting prey. He was handsome in the way of men who'd been told so all their lives, polished and symmetrical and completely aware of his effect on people. His suit probably cost more than her monthly salary. His smile was warm and welcoming and didn't reach his eyes. "Evelyn," he said, extending his hand. "Thank you for coming. I wasn't sure you would." She shook his hand, letting the contact linger just long enough to seem friendly, but not intimate. "Your invitation was intriguing. Please sit." He gestured to the chair across from him. "I hope you don't mind that I changed the reservation. I thought privacy would be more comfortable for a conversation like this." Translation: "I want you isolated and off balance." "Of course," Evelyn said, settling into her chair. "Though I admit I'm curious what kind of conversation requires this much privacy." Victor's smile widened. "The kind where we can be honest with each other. No pretense, no corporate politics." He poured wine into her glass, something red and probably obscenely expensive. "You've worked for my brother for 2 years. I imagine that's exhausting." Brother, not half-brother. Claiming the relationship while simultaneously positioning himself as her ally. "Adrian is demanding," she said carefully, "but I've learned a lot." "I'm sure you have. Adrian excels at extracting value from people." Victor lifted his glass. "To new opportunities." Evelyn touched her glass to his, taking a small sip. The wine was exceptional. Of course it was. "You sent me roses," she said, deciding to push instead of dance around the subject. "Why?" Victor looked delighted by her directness. "Because I wanted to meet you, and I knew Adrian would never allow it if I asked nicely." "So you provoked him." "I got his attention. There's a difference." Victor leaned back, utterly relaxed. "Tell me, Evelyn, what do you know about me?" "Very little. Adrian doesn't talk about his family." "Of course he doesn't. That would require acknowledging that he's not entirely self-made." Victor's tone stayed pleasant, but something cold flickered in his eyes. "Did you know we're brothers? That we shared a father who pitted us against each other our entire lives?" He mentioned it. "Did he mention that our father left him everything? The company, the name, the legacy? While I got scraps and the consolation prize of being called Calder instead of Vale." Evelyn kept her expression neutral even as her mind raced. This was the resentment Adrian had warned her about, raw and bleeding and decades old. "That sounds difficult," she said. "It was clarifying." Victor swirled his wine. "It taught me that family means nothing, that loyalty is a transaction, that everyone has a price." There it was, the opening move. "Is that why you invited me here?" Evelyn asked. "To find out my price?" Victor's smile turned razor sharp. "I invited you here because you're the most important person in my brother's life, and you don't even know it." Her heart stuttered, but she kept her voice steady. "I'm his assistant. You're his weak spot, his vulnerability, the one person who could destroy everything he's built." Victor leaned forward. "And I want to give you the chance to do exactly that." The words hung in the air between them like a blade poised to strike. Evelyn's fingers tightened imperceptibly around her wine glass, but she forced her expression to remain curious rather than alarmed. In her ear, she could hear the faint static of the surveillance feed, Adrian listening to every word, probably fighting the urge to storm through the door. "That's quite an accusation," she said evenly. "What makes you think I have any interest in destroying Adrian?" Victor laughed, the sound rich and genuinely amused. "I don't think you want to destroy him. I think you could, if you chose to. There's a difference." He refilled her wine glass even though she'd barely touched it. "You have access to everything, Evelyn. Financial records, strategic plans, client lists, confidential communications. You're the keystone holding his entire empire together." I'm loyal to Adrian. For now. Victor's eyes glittered. But loyalty is expensive, and I'm willing to pay premium prices. Here it comes, Evelyn thought. The offer. The temptation designed to make her doubt everything. I'm listening, she said, because that's what someone who was actually considering betrayal would say. Victor pulled out his phone, tapped something, and turned the screen toward her. A banking statement filled the display, and Evelyn's breath caught despite herself. $5 million. That's the signing bonus, Victor said casually, like he was discussing the weather. Yours, the moment you agree to work with me instead of against me. No strings, no obligations beyond providing me with information I need. Evelyn stared at the number, her mind racing. $5 million. Enough to disappear, to start over anywhere in the world, to never be invisible or struggling or dependent again. It would be so easy. What kind of information? She asked, buying time while her pulse hammered. Nothing dramatic. Strategic plans, acquisition targets, upcoming announcements. Victor swiped to another screen, a detailed list of specific documents he wanted. Just business intelligence, the kind of thing that helps me stay competitive. Corporate espionage dressed up in reasonable language. Evelyn scanned the list, recognizing half the files from Adrian's private server. Information that would let Victor anticipate every move, counter every strategy, systematically dismantle everything Adrian had built. This is more than staying competitive, she said. This is a roadmap to destroying him. I prefer to think of it as leveling the playing field. Victor set down his phone. Our father gave Adrian every advantage. I'm simply trying to balance the scales. The bitterness in his voice was palpable, decades of resentment compressed into a single sentence. Evelyn found herself almost feeling sorry for him, almost, until she remembered the calculated cruelty of those roses, the deliberate invasion of her life. And what happens after you've balanced the scales? She asked. I acquire Vale Industries, merge it with Calder Holdings, build something bigger than either of us could alone. Victor leaned forward, his expression earnest. This doesn't have to be personal, Evelyn. It's just business. Adrian will land on his feet. Men like him always do. But you could finally have security, freedom, a life that isn't defined by someone else's ambitions. It was a good pitch. Seductive, even. Victor had clearly studied her, knew exactly which pressure points to apply. The offer of independence to someone who'd spent her whole life scrambling for stability. The suggestion that she deserved better than being Adrian's shadow. If she were actually the person Victor thought she was, competent but undervalued, loyal but underpaid, invisible but craving recognition, she might have been tempted. But Victor had made one critical miscalculation. He thought she wanted to be seen by the world. She only wanted to be seen by one person, and Adrian had been seeing her all along. That's a generous offer, Evelyn said carefully, but I need to understand the timeline. When would you need this information? Victor's smile widened, sensing victory. Immediately. I'm moving against Adrian within the next 2 weeks. The acquisition attempt will be hostile and fast. If I have the inside information you can provide, it'll be over before he can mount a defense. 2 weeks. Adrian had suspected something was coming, but not this soon. And my role afterward? Evelyn pressed. Once you've acquired Vale Industries, what happens to me? Whatever you want. Chief Operating Officer. Vice President of Strategy. I value competence, Evelyn, and you're clearly exceptional at what you do. Victor reached across the table, his hand covering hers. Adrian has kept you in the shadows because he's afraid of being overshadowed. I would put you front and center. His touch made her skin crawl, but she didn't pull away. Instead, she let her gaze drop to their joined hands, as if considering. In her ear, she heard a faint sound. Adrian, probably losing his mind watching this. I need time to think, she said. Of course, this is a big decision. Victor squeezed her hand before releasing it. But I do need an answer soon. Say, by the end of the week? 3 days. He was giving her 3 days to choose between loyalty and self-interest, between Adrian and $5 million. The end of the week, she agreed. Victor raised his glass. To new partnerships. Evelyn touched her glass to his, taking another small sip. The wine that had tasted exceptional earlier now seemed bitter on her tongue. Can I ask you something? She said, setting down her glass. Anything. Why do you hate him so much? Adrian, I mean, is it really just about the inheritance? Victor's expression flickered. Surprise, maybe, that she'd asked directly. Then something darker settled over his features. You want to know why I hate my dear brother? He leaned back, swirling his wine. It's not the money. Not really. It's what the money represented. Our father's approval, his respect, his acknowledgement that I mattered. And Adrian got that instead. Adrian got everything. The name, the company, the pride of being the legitimate heir. Victor's voice turned caustic. Do you know what it's like, watching your father dote on another child while treating you like a mistake he wishes he could erase? Watching your mother beg for scraps while the other family lives in mansions? Evelyn saw the wounded child beneath the polished exterior, and despite everything, a flicker of empathy stirred. Victor and Adrian had both been damaged by the same cruel man, just in different ways. That must have been painful, she said quietly. It was clarifying. Victor's mask slipped back into place. It taught me that sentimentality is weakness, that family loyalty is a lie we tell ourselves, that the only person you can trust is yourself. Is that why you sent the roses? To prove that even Adrian's most trusted person could be turned? Victor smiled. Partly. But also because I was curious about the woman who managed to earn my brother's trust. Adrian doesn't trust easily. The fact that he relies on you so completely says something about you. Or something about him. Perhaps. Victor studied her with unsettling intensity. What do you see in him, Evelyn? Why stay loyal to a man who keeps you invisible? The question was a trap, designed to make her reveal the depth of her connection to Adrian. If she admitted she cared, Victor would know she couldn't be bought. If she claimed it was just business, he'd push harder on the financial incentive. Adrian gave me a chance when no one else would, she said, threading the needle between truth and strategy. I was nobody, no connections, no pedigree, just a state school degree and determination. He looked past all that and saw what I could do. It was true as far as it went, but it left out the part where she'd fallen in love with him somewhere between the late nights and the impossible deadlines, and the moments when his guard dropped and she saw the man beneath the armor. Gratitude, Victor said, nodding like this confirmed his theories. That's powerful. But Evelyn, gratitude isn't worth chaining yourself to someone else's empire. You could build your own. With your $5 million. With your own talent, amplified by the resources I can provide. Victor leaned forward again, his voice taking on an intimate quality. I'm not asking you to betray Adrian out of malice. I'm offering you the chance to choose yourself for once, to stop being someone's assistant and become someone's equal. It was masterfully done. Victor had taken her genuine history, the struggle, the invisibility, the hunger for recognition, and weaponized it. If she were anyone else, it might have worked. But she wasn't anyone else. She was the woman who'd kissed Adrian Vale at 2 a.m. and chosen him over every safer option. I appreciate the offer, Evelyn said, injecting just enough uncertainty into her voice to keep Victor hopeful. And I promise I'll think about it seriously, but I need time to process everything you've said. Take the time you need. Just remember. Victor's expression hardened almost imperceptibly. This opportunity won't be available forever. After I move against Adrian, allegiances will be locked in. You'll be either with me or against me, and I'm much more pleasant to my allies than my enemies. There it was. The velvet threat beneath the generous offer. Evelyn felt cold wash through her, but she kept her expression neutral. I understand. I hope you do. Victor signaled for the check. I've enjoyed this conversation, Evelyn. You're everything I thought you'd be. Intelligent, pragmatic, and far too valuable to waste as someone's secretary. Assistant, she wanted to correct, but she bit back the automatic response, understanding that the dismissive language was intentional. Victor was trying to make her feel diminished, undervalued, ready to reach for something better. The check arrived and disappeared within seconds, Victor handling it with the casual entitlement of someone who'd never questioned whether they could afford something. Let me have my driver take you home, he offered, standing. That's not necessary. I'll catch a cab. I insist. It's late, and these streets aren't always safe. His smile didn't waver, but Evelyn heard the subtext. I know where you live. I know your routines. I've been watching. Her pulse kicked up, but she forced herself to smile back. Thank you. That's very thoughtful. They walked through the restaurant together, and Evelyn was acutely aware of eyes tracking them, diners who would report back to their networks that Victor Calder had been seen with someone new, someone connected to Adrian Vale. The gossip would spread like wildfire. That was part of Victor's plan too, she realized. Making their meeting public, planting seeds of doubt about her loyalty before Adrian could control the narrative. Outside, a black town car waited. Victor opened the door himself, playing the gentleman. "Think about what I said," he told her. "You have potential that's being wasted. I'd hate to see you throw away this opportunity out of misplaced loyalty." "I'll think about it," Evelyn promised. She slid into the car and Victor closed the door. Through the tinted window, she watched him walk back toward the restaurant, his posture relaxed and confident. He thought he'd won. The car pulled away from the curb, and Evelyn finally allowed herself to exhale. Her hands were shaking. She pressed them flat against her thighs, trying to process everything that had just happened. "Turn left at the next street," she told the driver. He nodded, and Evelyn realized with a start that this wasn't Victor's driver at all. This was one of Adrian's security team. "Smart switch," she murmured. "Mr. Vale's orders, ma'am. He didn't want you actually alone with Calder's people." Relief flooded through her. Even when she'd thought she was in Victor's car, Adrian had been protecting her. The drive back to Adrian's building took 15 minutes, though it felt like hours. Evelyn stared out the window, replaying the conversation in her mind, cataloging every detail for Adrian. 2 weeks until Victor moved. $5 million bribe. Detailed list of files he wanted. The implicit threat when she'd hesitated. They had what they needed. Now they just had to figure out what to do with it. The car pulled into Adrian's private garage, and Evelyn's heart started racing again. She'd been so focused on surviving the dinner, on playing her role convincingly, that she hadn't let herself think about the aftermath, about facing Adrian after letting Victor touch her hand, after pretending to consider his offer, after sitting across from his enemy and smiling. The elevator ride to the penthouse felt eternal. When the doors finally opened, Adrian was there, standing in the middle of his living room like he'd been pacing for hours. He probably had been. Their eyes met, and something in Evelyn's chest cracked open. "I'm okay," she said, before he could ask. Adrian crossed the space between them in 3 strides, pulling her into his arms with barely controlled desperation. He didn't kiss her, just held her, his face buried in her hair, his hands spanning her back like he needed to confirm she was real and whole and safe. "I'm okay," she repeated, her voice muffled against his chest. "I know, I heard everything." His voice was rough. "But hearing it and seeing you walk out safely are different things." Evelyn pulled back just enough to see his face. He looked wrecked, jaw tight, eyes dark with residual fear and something that might have been rage. "He touched you," Adrian said, "put his hands on you. It was strategic. I needed him to think." "I know what you needed him to think. Doesn't mean I have to like watching it." He cupped her face, his thumbs brushing her cheekbones. "You were brilliant, absolutely brilliant. But if I never have to watch you sit across from that bastard again, it'll be too soon." Despite everything, Evelyn smiled. "Jealous?" "Homicidal." But his mouth quirked. "Also jealous. Also terrified. Also so damn proud of you, I don't have words." She kissed him then, pouring 2 hours of tension into the contact. Adrian kissed her back like she was oxygen, like he'd been holding his breath the entire time she was gone. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Evelyn rested her forehead against his. "We need to talk about what I learned," she said. "I know, but first—" He pulled back, his eyes searching hers. "Are you really okay? He didn't threaten you? Didn't try anything?" "He made his pitch, offered $5 million to turn on you, gave me 3 days to decide." She watched Adrian's expression darken. "And he let slip that he's planning his move within 2 weeks. Hostile takeover. Fast and brutal." Adrian swore viciously. 2 weeks. He's moving faster than I thought. He's confident. Thinks he's already won because he's convinced I'll give him what he needs. What exactly did he ask for? Evelyn pulled out her phone, where she'd memorized the list of files Victor wanted. Strategic acquisition targets, quarterly financial projections, the Morrison deal specifications, client contact database, basically everything that would let him anticipate your every move. Adrian's jaw worked as he processed the implications. If he had all that, He could counter every defensive strategy I have, block my financing, poach my clients, dismantle the company piece by piece before I could stop him. That's the plan. Evelyn moved to the couch, suddenly exhausted. The adrenaline that had carried her through dinner was crashing hard. He framed it as leveling the playing field, made it sound almost reasonable. That's Victor's specialty, making destruction sound like justice. Adrian sat beside her, close enough that their thighs touched. What did you tell him? That I'd think about it, that I needed time to process. She met his eyes. I played interested but cautious, made him work for it. He bought it completely. Of course he did. You were perfect. Adrian's hand found hers, threading their fingers together. But now we have a timeline, 2 weeks to prepare for whatever he's planning. Can we counter it if we know he's coming? Maybe. Depends on how he structured the attack. Adrian was already shifting into strategy mode, his mind racing ahead. If he's got the financing lined up, if he's already secured board votes or shareholder proxies. He's liquidating assets, Evelyn interrupted. I saw it in the financial records you showed me. He's converting everything to cash. That takes time to arrange. Adrian's eyes sharpened. How much time? Weeks, at least. Maybe a month if the assets are complex. She pulled up the documents on her phone. Look at these transactions. He started the process almost 2 months ago. He's been planning this for a while. Adrian studied the screen, his expression calculating. If he's liquidating, he'll need to complete the sales before he can move. That might give us more time than 2 weeks. Or he's bluffing about the timeline, trying to pressure me into deciding faster. Possible. Adrian set down the phone. Either way, we can't wait. We need to move first. Move how? I'm not sure yet. He stood, pacing again. But if Victor thinks you're considering his offer, we use that. Feed him information, wrong information. Make him think he's getting what he wants while we prepare the real defense. Evelyn's mind raced, seeing the shape of the plan. Disinformation campaign. I give him files that look real but lead him in the wrong direction. Exactly. He makes decisions based on false intelligence. By the time he realizes he's been played, we've already countered his actual strategy. Adrian's smile was sharp. He taught me that trick, actually. Used it against me in a deal 5 years ago. About time I returned the favor. There's one problem, Evelyn said. He's smart. If the information is too obviously false, he'll know it's a trap. So we make it subtle, mix truth with lies, give him things he already knows to build credibility, then slip in the false details. Adrian's eyes met hers. Can you do that? Create documents convincing enough to fool him? I've been managing your files for 2 years. I know how everything should look. She felt a fierce satisfaction building. I can absolutely do that. Then that's our play. Adrian pulled out his phone. I'll have my legal team start preparing countermeasures, poison pills, asset protections. Everything we need to make a hostile takeover impossibly expensive. And I'll prepare the false intelligence package. Evelyn was already mentally cataloging which files to alter, how to make the changes subtle enough to pass scrutiny. When should I give it to him? End of the week, like he asked. Any earlier looks too eager. Any later, and he might get suspicious. Adrian paused. But Evelyn, once you hand over those files, there's no going back. Victor will know you've chosen a side, and he won't take that well. The implicit warning hung between them. Victor had been polite tonight, charming even. But that courtesy was contingent on Evelyn's cooperation. Once she rejected him, once she proved she couldn't be bought, the gloves would come off. I know, she said quietly, but I made my choice last night. Everything else is just theater. Adrian crossed back to her, kneeling in front of the couch so they were eye level. I need you to understand what that means. Victor doesn't forgive disloyalty. He'll come after you. Maybe not physically, but professionally, financially, every way he can think of to hurt you. Let him try. Evelyn's voice was steady. I've survived worse than Victor Calder, and this time, I'm not alone. Something fierce and protective flashed in Adrian's eyes. No, you're not alone. Not anymore. He kissed her again, slower this time, less desperate and more claiming, like he was making a promise with his mouth that words couldn't capture. When they broke apart, Evelyn's heart was racing for entirely different reasons than it had been at dinner. We should work on the strategy, she said, though her body was voting for very different activities. We should, Adrian agreed. But he didn't move, his hand still framing her face. Adrian, I love you. The words detonated in the space between them. Evelyn's breath caught. What? I love you, he repeated, his voice rough but certain. I've been in love with you for months, maybe longer. And I need to say it now, before everything gets complicated, before we're in the middle of corporate warfare, and I'm trying to keep you safe while also trying to save the company. His thumbs brushed across her cheekbones. I love you, Evelyn. Completely. Inconveniently. Probably unprofessionally. But definitely. Tears pricked her eyes. That's the worst timing imaginable. I know. We're about to go to war with your psychotic half-brother. I'm aware. And you decide now is the moment to tell me you love me? Seemed important. His mouth quirked. In case something goes wrong, I wanted you to know. Evelyn grabbed his face, pulling him close. Nothing is going wrong. We're going to destroy Victor, protect the company, and then we're going to figure out how to actually be together without everything being a crisis. She kissed him hard. And I love you too, you controlling, brilliant, impossible man. Adrian made a sound somewhere between a laugh and a groan, hauling her against him. They kissed like the world was ending, like morning might never come, like this moment was all they had. When they finally came up for air, tangled together on the couch, Adrian's expression had shifted from vulnerable to determined. Okay, he said, now we work. They spent the next 3 hours building their counter-strategy. Evelyn pulled up files on her laptop while Adrian coordinated with his legal team, his CFO, his head of security. The penthouse transformed into a war room, papers scattered across every surface, coffee cups multiplying like rabbits. The false intelligence package took shape slowly. Evelyn altered acquisition targets, making it look like Adrian was pursuing companies that would actually weaken his position. She modified financial projections to suggest cash flow problems that didn't exist. She created correspondence with fictional investors discussing deals that would never happen. Each change was subtle, professional, exactly the kind of information Victor would expect to find. This is perfect, Adrian said, reviewing her work around midnight. He'll think he's getting the crown jewels. That's the idea. Evelyn rubbed her eyes, exhaustion pulling at her. Once he makes decisions based on this, how long before he realizes it's false? Weeks, if we're lucky. Days, if he's thorough. Adrian set down the laptop. But by then, we'll have already locked down everything he's trying to target. The false intelligence buys us time to prepare the real defenses. And what happens when he figures it out? Adrian's expression went cold. Then he learns that I'm not the same person he manipulated 5 years ago. That some of us actually learn from our mistakes. The fury beneath his controlled tone reminded Evelyn that Adrian wasn't just protecting a company. This was personal. Decades of resentment and competition compressed into a single confrontation. Tell me about the deal 5 years ago, she said. The one where he used disinformation against you. Adrian was quiet for a moment, and Evelyn thought he might not answer. Then he sighed, setting down his coffee. I was trying to acquire a tech startup. Brilliant team, revolutionary product, exactly the kind of thing that would have positioned Vail Industries perfectly for the next decade. His jaw tightened. Victor found out, posed as a potential investor, got me to share my strategy, my timeline, my maximum bid. And then he used it against you. He leaked selective information to my competitors, made it look like the startup's tech was flawed, spooked my board. By the time I realized what was happening, Victor had swooped in and acquired the company himself. Adrian's hands flexed. 6 months later, that flawed technology was generating billions. For Victor, Evelyn felt anger kindle in her chest. He sabotaged you. He outplayed me. There's a difference. Adrian met her eyes. I was arrogant, thought being smarter meant being safe. Victor taught me that intelligence without vigilance is just another kind of stupidity. So you've been vigilant ever since. Paranoid is more accurate. I stopped trusting people, stopped sharing information, built walls so high that no one could get close enough to hurt me. His expression softened. And then you showed up, quietly competent, utterly trustworthy. And I realized that isolation wasn't strength. It was just another kind of defeat. Evelyn reached for his hand. You trusted me. You gave me a reason to. He squeezed her fingers. Every day for 2 years, you proved that not everyone is Victor. That loyalty isn't always transactional. That some people can be trusted with everything and never betray it. I won't start now. I know. He pulled her close, wrapping his arms around her. Which is why this is going to work. Victor thinks everyone has a price because that's how he operates. He can't conceive of loyalty that can't be bought. It's his fundamental blind spot. Evelyn rested her head against his chest, listening to his heartbeat. So we use his own assumptions against him. Exactly. He thinks you're considering his offer because he can't imagine you wouldn't be. When you hand over the false intelligence, he'll see it as confirmation that you've chosen money over loyalty. Adrian's voice went hard. And that assumption will destroy him. They sat there for a while, wrapped in each other, the weight of what they were about to do settling over them. This wasn't just corporate maneuvering anymore. This was personal, dangerous, a gamble that could cost them everything. But as Evelyn felt Adrian's arms around her, felt the steady rhythm of his breathing, she knew they didn't have a choice. Victor had made this inevitable the moment he sent those roses. Now they were just finishing what he started. We should sleep, Adrian finally said, though he made no move to let her go. Probably. Big day tomorrow. Need to finalize the false documents, coordinate with legal, prepare for every possible countermove Victor might make. Sounds exhausting. It will be. He pressed a kiss to the top of her head. But we'll do it together. Together. The words settled into Evelyn's bones like a promise. She'd spent most of her life alone. Foster care, college, the early years of her career when every day felt like proving she deserved to exist in spaces that didn't want her. She'd gotten used to isolation, mistaken it for independence. But this, Adrian's arms around her, their shared strategy, the sense of being part of something bigger than herself, this was better than independence. This was partnership. Together, she agreed. They finally disentangled and headed to their separate rooms, though Evelyn noticed Adrian hesitated in the hallway, like he was fighting the urge to follow her. Good night, she said. Good night. His eyes held promises of things that would have to wait until after the war. Evelyn closed her bedroom door and leaned against it, her mind still spinning. In less than 48 hours, everything had changed. She'd gone from invisible assistant to active participant in a corporate battle that would determine the fate of everything Adrian had built. And somehow, in the middle of all that chaos, she'd found exactly what she'd been missing her entire life. Someone who saw her, really saw her, not as useful or decorative or convenient, but as essential, as his equal, as his choice. She changed into pajamas and climbed into bed, but sleep was a long time coming. Her mind kept replaying the dinner with Victor, analyzing every word, every gesture, looking for details she might have missed. The way he'd positioned himself as her ally against Adrian's control, the calculated intimacy of his touch, the implicit threat beneath his generous offer. Victor was dangerous in ways that had nothing to do with physical violence. He was dangerous because he understood people, knew how to find the cracks in their armor and apply pressure until they broke. But he'd miscalculated with Evelyn. He'd assumed that being undervalued would make her vengeful, that invisibility would make her desperate. The 2 years of serving someone else's ambitions would leave her hungry for her own. He didn't understand that she'd never been invisible to the person who mattered, that Adrian had been seeing her all along. Evelyn finally drifted off around 3 a.m, her last conscious thought a fierce determination. Victor Calder thought he was playing chess. He was about to learn that some games were won before the first move was made. The next 3 days passed in a blur of controlled chaos. Evelyn spent her mornings at Vale Industries pretending nothing had changed, managing Adrian's schedule with her usual efficiency while secretly building the false intelligence package that would be Victor's undoing. She smiled at colleagues who had no idea she was at the center of a corporate war. She answered emails and organized meetings and maintained the perfect facade of the invisible assistant. But beneath the surface, everything had transformed. Adrian's legal team worked around the clock, implementing defensive measures. Poison pill provisions that would make a hostile takeover catastrophically expensive, golden parachutes for key employees to prevent poaching, asset restructuring that would protect the company's most valuable holdings. Each move was designed to counter the attack they knew was coming. And every night, Evelyn returned to Adrian's penthouse, where they strategized like generals planning a battle. "The Morrison deal specifications," Adrian said on the second night, reviewing her altered documents. "You made it look like I'm overpaying by 30%. Enough to make Victor think you're desperate to close it." Evelyn highlighted another section. "And I buried a clause in the payment structure that would actually trigger a breach if he tried to interfere. He won't notice it until it's too late." Adrian's smile was wolfish. "You're devious. I love it. I learned from watching you negotiate." She pulled up another file. "The client database took longer. I had to create an entire fictional tier of VIP clients who don't exist but look completely legitimate on paper." "How many?" 15. All with realistic backstories, contact information that routes to burner numbers, and transaction histories that match our usual patterns." She felt a grim satisfaction. If Victor tries to poach them, he'll waste weeks chasing ghosts. Adrian studied the fabricated entries, his expression shifting from impressed to something darker. "This is perfect, too perfect. Victor will think he's hit the jackpot. That's what we want, right? Maximum confidence before the fall." "Yes, but Evelyn," he looked up from the screen, his eyes serious. "Once you hand this over, Victor will move fast. He'll start making decisions based on false information immediately, which means we need to be ready for the moment he realizes he's been played." "How long do we have?" "A week, maybe 2. Depends on how quickly he acts on what you give him." Adrian closed the laptop. "And when he figures it out, he's going to be dangerous. Not just angry, dangerous." The distinction wasn't lost on her. Victor's charm at dinner had been a tool, easily discarded when it stopped being useful. Underneath was something colder, more ruthless. The man who'd spent decades nursing resentment wouldn't take betrayal lightly. "We'll be ready," Evelyn said, with more confidence than she felt. "We will." Adrian pulled her close, his arms wrapping around her like he could shield her from what was coming. "I've increased security. Not just here. Everywhere. Your office. Your apartment. The routes you travel. My team will be watching." "You think he'll retaliate physically?" "I think Victor doesn't have boundaries when he feels wronged. And you rejecting his offer, choosing me over him?" Adrian's jaw tightened. "He'll see it as the ultimate insult. His half-brother's assistant picking loyalty over $5 million. It'll infuriate him." Evelyn understood the subtext. To Victor, she wasn't a person making a choice. She was a pawn that had malfunctioned, a tool that had refused to be used. His ego wouldn't tolerate it. "Then let him be furious," she said. "Angry people make mistakes. They also do reckless things." Adrian cupped her face, his thumb brushing across her cheekbone. "Promise me you'll be careful, that you won't take any unnecessary risks." "I promise." She covered his hand with hers. "But you have to promise me something too." "Anything. That you won't try to push me away to protect me. That we face this together, no matter how dangerous it gets." Adrian's expression did something complicated, love and fear and frustration all at once. "You're asking me not to protect you. I'm asking you to trust that I can protect myself while we protect each other." She held his gaze. "I'm not a liability, Adrian. I'm your partner. Start treating me like one." For a moment she thought he might argue. Adrian Vale was constitutionally incapable of not controlling every variable, and she was asking him to relinquish control of the thing he cared about most. But then he kissed her, hard and fierce and yielding all at once. "Partners," he said against her mouth, "even when it terrifies me. Especially when it terrifies you." They worked until past midnight, refining every detail of the false intelligence package, until it was indistinguishable from reality. Evelyn had created a masterpiece of deception, documents that would pass any scrutiny, that would lead Victor to make exactly the wrong decisions at exactly the right time. On the third morning, she woke early and stared at the ceiling of the guest room, her stomach churning with anticipation and dread. Today was the deadline, the end of the week Victor had given her to decide. She found Adrian already awake in the kitchen, dressed for the office but distracted. He was staring at his coffee like it held answers. "Second thoughts?" she asked. "About the plan?" "No." He looked up, his eyes shadowed. "About putting you in the line of fire? Constantly. Evelyn poured herself coffee and leaned against the counter. It's too late for that conversation. We're already committed. I know, doesn't mean I have to like it. You don't. You just have to trust it. She took a sip, letting the caffeine fortify her nerves. I'm meeting him at 2. Cafe in Midtown. Public location, lots of witnesses. I'll hand over the flash drive, gauge his reaction, and get out. My team will be there, 3 agents positioned around the cafe, 2 more in a car outside. Adrian's voice shifted into the clipped efficiency he used when planning operations. You'll have a panic button. If anything feels wrong, I know the protocol. She set down her coffee and moved to stand in front of him. Adrian, this is going to work. Victor's going to take the bait. And while he's busy making decisions based on lies, we're going to fortify everything he's trying to attack. And when he realizes, then we prove that loyalty isn't weakness, that choosing people over profit isn't naive. She reached up, straightening his tie even though it didn't need straightening. We prove that he's wrong about everything. Adrian caught her hands, holding them against his chest. I should be there, watching. In the cafe, not in some surveillance van 3 blocks away. You can't be. If Victor sees you, he'll know it's a setup. I know. His fingers tightened on hers. Doesn't make it easier. They stood there for a moment, neither wanting to let go. Then Adrian's phone buzzed, shattering the moment with a reminder that the world kept moving whether they were ready or not. The morning at the office was surreal. Evelyn went through her usual routine, answering emails, coordinating meetings, managing the 1,000 small crises that made up a normal day. But nothing was normal. The flash drive containing Victor's downfall sat in her purse like a live grenade. Adrian was in back-to-back meetings all morning, but every time he passed her desk, their eyes met. Silent communication. You okay? I'm okay. Still committed? Absolutely. At 1:30, Evelyn excused herself to the restroom, changed into the outfit she'd brought, professional but approachable, designed to make Victor feel like she was ready to join his team. She checked the panic button disguised as a bracelet charm, made sure the tracking device in her earrings was active, and took 3 deep breaths. You can do this. You've been preparing for 3 days. You know exactly what to say, how to act, when to leave. She walked out of the building and hailed a cab, watching Manhattan blur past the windows. The cafe Victor had chosen was in Midtown, trendy enough to be seen as sophisticated, but public enough to seem safe. Another calculated choice designed to make her comfortable. The security team would already be in position. Adrian would be in the surveillance van, watching every angle, listening to every word. She wasn't alone. The cafe was moderately crowded. Business people on late lunches, freelancers camping out with laptops, tourists studying maps. Evelyn scanned the space and found Victor at a corner table, scrolling through his phone with the casual confidence of someone who assumed he'd already won. He looked up as she approached, his smile warm and welcoming. Evelyn, right on time. I appreciate punctuality. Force of habit. She sat across from him, setting her purse carefully beside her chair. 2 years working for Adrian will do that. I imagine it will, Victor signaled the waiter. Coffee? Something stronger? Coffee's fine. They made small talk while the waiter brought their drinks, neutral subjects designed to ease into the real conversation. Evelyn let Victor lead, watching him perform the role of gracious Victor. So, he finally said, stirring sugar into his espresso, have you had time to think about my offer? This was it, the moment everything hinged on. Evelyn reached into her purse, her fingers closing around the flash drive. I have, and I've made my decision. Victor's eyes gleamed with satisfaction. I'm listening. She pulled out the flash drive and set it on the table between them. Everything you asked for. Strategic plans, financial projections, the Morrison deal, client database, all of it. Victor's hand moved toward the drive, but he didn't pick it up yet. And in exchange? The $5 million, as promised, plus the guarantee of a VP position once the acquisition is complete. Evelyn kept her voice steady, businesslike. I want it in writing, contract signed before I walk out of here. Of course. Victor pulled out his tablet, already prepared with the contract. I had my legal team draw this up yesterday. $5 million deposited into an account of your choosing, VP of Strategic Operations position, guaranteed regardless of acquisition outcome. 3-year employment contract with full benefits. He turned the screen toward her, and Evelyn scanned the document with the practiced eye of someone who'd reviewed hundreds of contracts. It was legitimate, binding, exactly what he'd promised. If she were actually betraying Adrian, this would be the deal of a lifetime. "One question," she said, not touching the tablet yet. "What happens if the acquisition fails? If Adrian somehow blocks the takeover?" Victor's smile didn't waver. "It won't fail. Not with the information you're providing. But even if some miracle occurred and Adrian survived, you'd still have your $5 million and your position. I take care of the people who help me, Evelyn. Loyalty is rewarded." The irony of him talking about loyalty made her want to laugh. Instead, she nodded slowly, like she was considering. "And Adrian?" she asked. "What happens to him?" "He'll land on his feet. Men like my brother always do. Probably start another company, make another fortune." Victor leaned back, utterly relaxed. "This isn't personal, Evelyn. It's just business. The stronger company absorbing the weaker one. Happens every day." Except it was deeply personal. Evelyn could see it in the satisfaction in Victor's eyes, hear it in the way he said "my brother," with just enough emphasis to make it a taunt. This wasn't about building something bigger. This was about tearing down the person who'd gotten the approval Victor had always craved. "Okay," Evelyn said, picking up the stylus. "I'm in." She signed the contract with steady hands, each stroke of the pen another layer of deception. Victor watched like a predator watching prey walk into a trap, utterly convinced of his victory. When she finished, he countersigned with a flourish, then pocketed the flash drive. "Pleasure doing business with you, Evelyn?" He raised his coffee cup. "To new beginnings." She touched her cup to his, the gesture feeling like a betrayal even though she knew it was theater. New beginnings. Victor's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, and something shifted in his expression, eagerness mixed with vindication. "My tech team just confirmed the files are legitimate. I have to say, I had a moment of doubt. Thought maybe Adrian had figured out what you were doing and fed you false information." Evelyn's heart skipped, but she kept her expression mildly curious. "Why would you think that?" "Because he's paranoid and brilliant and has never trusted anyone in his life." Victor's smile turned sharp. "Except apparently, you. His one blind spot." The words hit harder than they should have, because they were almost true. She was Adrian's blind spot. The one person he'd let past his defenses, the one variable he couldn't fully control. Victor was just wrong about what that meant. "Adrian trusts me because I've earned it," Evelyn said quietly. 2 years of loyalty, of proving I'm not like everyone else he's dealt with. And yet here you are, selling him out for $5 million. Victor's eyes glittered. "Guess he was wrong about you after all." The casual cruelty of it, the pleasure Victor took in proving that trust was worthless, that everyone had a price, crystallized everything Evelyn hated about him. He didn't just want to win. He wanted to prove that winning was all that mattered, that connection and loyalty and love were just weaknesses waiting to be exploited. "I guess he was," she said, because that's what Victor needed to hear. Her phone buzzed with a text. She glanced at it, a message from an unknown number, but she recognized the code. Adrian's security team, signaling that they'd recorded everything and she could leave whenever she was ready. "I should go," Evelyn said, standing. "Don't want to be away from the office too long. Might raise suspicions." "Of course, though you won't have to worry about that much longer." Victor stood as well, ever the gentleman. "Once I move against Adrian, your position there will become untenable anyway. Better to have already switched sides." "When are you planning to move?" "Soon. Very soon." Victor's smile was all teeth. "The element of surprise is crucial. Thanks to you, I'll know exactly when and where to strike for maximum impact." Except he wouldn't. Every piece of information on that flash drive was designed to lead him in exactly the wrong direction, to make him commit resources to battles that didn't exist while the real vulnerabilities remained protected. "Good luck," Evelyn said, extending her hand. Victor shook it, his grip confident and possessive. "I don't need luck. I have something better. I have the truth about Adrian's weaknesses." He had lies. Beautiful, convincing lies that would unravel his entire strategy. But Evelyn just smiled. "Then I guess you have everything you need." She walked out of the cafe, her pulse thundering in her ears. The spring air hit her face like a blessing, washing away the stale feeling of sitting across from Victor and pretending to be someone she wasn't. 2 blocks away, she spotted the surveillance van. The side door opened and Adrian's head of security gestured her inside. Evelyn climbed in, and there was Adrian, surrounded by monitors and recording equipment, his expression tight with barely controlled tension. Their eyes met. "It's done," she said. Adrian pulled her into his arms so fast she barely had time to register the movement. He didn't say anything, just held her, his face buried in her hair, his hands spanning her back like he needed physical confirmation that she was safe and whole and back. "He bought it completely," Evelyn said against his chest. "Took the flash drive, signed the contract, even did a preliminary check and confirmed the files looked legitimate." "I heard." Adrian's voice was rough. "You were perfect, but if he'd done one thing, said one word that made you uncomfortable, he didn't. It went exactly as planned." She pulled back to see his face. "We did it, Adrian. He thinks he's won. Now we just have to make sure that confidence destroys him." Adrian cupped her face, his thumbs brushing across her cheekbones. "The contract he signed, $5 million. That's real money, Evelyn. Legally binding." "I know. You could take it. Even though the information you gave him is false, the contract itself is legitimate. You could walk away with $5 million and leave all of this behind." Evelyn understood what he was really asking. One more chance to choose the easier path, to take the money and run, to be free of the danger and complications that came with choosing him. "I don't want his money," she said firmly. "I want him to fail. I want to watch his face when he realizes that loyalty can't be bought, that not everyone operates on his cynical terms." She held Adrian's gaze. "I want to win. With you." Adrian kissed her like a man who'd been holding his breath for 3 days and could finally exhale. When they broke apart, his forehead rested against hers. "Partners," he said. "Partners," she confirmed. The security chief cleared her throat diplomatically. "Hate to interrupt, but we should move. If Calder has any counter-surveillance, they'll notice this van's been parked too long." Adrian nodded, releasing Evelyn reluctantly. "Take us back to the office. Different route. Standard protocols." The drive back was tense, despite the success. Evelyn sat beside Adrian in the van, their hands linked, while the security team coordinated with other units to make sure they weren't being followed. "What happens now?" Evelyn asked quietly. "Now we wait. Victor will start making moves based on the information you gave him. He'll reposition assets, approach the fictional clients, prepare for the vulnerabilities that don't exist." Adrian's expression was calculating. "Every move he makes will be wrong, and by the time he realizes it, we'll have already secured everything he was really trying to attack." "How long before he figures it out?" "Days, maybe a week if we're lucky." Adrian's jaw tightened. "And then things get dangerous." They arrived back at Vale Industries through the underground garage, avoiding the main entrance. Adrian's office felt like a sanctuary after the tension of the cafe, but Evelyn knew it was temporary. The real battle was just beginning. Adrian immediately convened a meeting with his core team: legal, finance, operations, security. Evelyn sat in because she'd earned the right, because she wasn't just his assistant anymore. She was his partner in every sense of the word. "Calder has the false intelligence package," Adrian announced without preamble. "We proceed to phase 2. Michael, I need the poison pill provisions activated immediately. Sarah, start the asset restructuring we discussed. Marcus, I want enhanced security on all key personnel and facilities." The room erupted into coordinated chaos, everyone moving with the precision of people who'd been preparing for this moment. Evelyn watched Adrian orchestrate it all, saw the steel beneath the sophisticated exterior. This was the man who'd built an empire from nothing, who'd survived a father who weaponized love and a brother who wanted him destroyed. And he'd chosen her. The meeting lasted 2 hours, every contingency planned, every vulnerability addressed. When it finally ended and the room cleared, Adrian slumped in his chair with uncharacteristic exhaustion. "You okay?" Evelyn asked, moving to stand beside him. "Tired, worried, afraid I've miscalculated somewhere." He looked up at her. "But also strangely hopeful. For the first time in 5 years, I feel like I'm 1 step ahead of Victor instead of 3 steps behind." "That's because you have something he doesn't." "What?" Someone who chose you without being paid to. Evelyn ran her fingers through his hair. Victor thinks loyalty is transactional, that everyone has a price, but he can't account for people who choose connection over self-interest. It's his blind spot. Adrian pulled her down into his lap, wrapping his arms around her waist. I love you. I know. She kissed him softly. And I love you, which is why we're going to win. They stayed like that for a while, stealing a moment of peace before the storm, because they both knew what was coming. Victor would make his moves, would start executing his plan based on the false intelligence. And for a few days, maybe a week, he'd think he was winning, but then the cracks would show. The fictional clients would turn out to be ghosts. The vulnerabilities would prove to be traps. The inside information would reveal itself as masterfully crafted lies. And Victor Calder would realize that he'd been played by the one person he'd assumed would be easy to manipulate. The assistant he'd thought was invisible, the woman who'd chosen loyalty over $5 million, the partner who'd proven that love was stronger than greed. Evelyn's phone buzzed with an alert from the security team. Victor had already started making calls, reaching out to the fictional VIP clients she'd created. The trap was working. He's moving fast, she said, showing Adrian the notification. Good. The faster he moves, the harder he'll fall. Adrian's expression was granite. By the time he realizes what's happened, it'll be too late to salvage his position. And then? Then we end this, permanently. Adrian stood, setting her gently on her feet. But first, we need to make sure you're protected. Victor's going to be furious when he figures out he's been manipulated, and you're going to be his primary target. I can handle Victor. I know you can, but you won't have to handle him alone. Adrian pulled out his phone, already making arrangements. Increased security detail, secure transportation, safe house if necessary. Whatever it takes. Evelyn wanted to argue that she didn't need all that, but she understood the truth beneath Adrian's protective instincts. This wasn't about thinking she was weak. This was about loving her enough to do everything possible to keep her safe. Okay, she said. We do it your way. Thank you. He kissed her forehead. Now let's go home and try to get some rest. Tomorrow, everything changes. They left the office together, no longer bothering to maintain professional distance. The staff who saw them leave had to know something had shifted, but Evelyn found she didn't care. Let them gossip, let them speculate. The truth was simpler and more powerful than any rumor. She'd chosen Adrian Vale, completely, irrevocably. And together they were going to prove that some things couldn't be bought, manipulated, or destroyed. Not loyalty, not love, not the bond between two people who'd finally stopped hiding and started fighting for what mattered. The drive back to Adrian's penthouse felt different than it had 3 days ago. Then, Evelyn had been preparing for battle. Now, the battle had begun, and there was no turning back. But as she sat beside Adrian in the back of the car, their fingers intertwined, she felt something she hadn't expected. Peace. Not the peace of safety or certainty. The peace of knowing she was exactly where she was supposed to be, doing exactly what she was meant to do. Fighting for the man she loved, protecting what they'd built together. Proving that Victor Calder's cynical worldview was wrong. Tomorrow, Victor would start to realize that something was off. That the intelligence he'd paid $5 million for was leading him into traps instead of toward victory. And the day after that, or the day after that, he'd figure out that Evelyn Carter had never been the weak spot he thought she was. She was Adrian's greatest strength, and that was going to be Victor's downfall. The explosion came exactly 6 days later. Evelyn was at her desk reviewing security reports when Adrian's office door flew open with enough force to rattle the frame. She looked up to find him standing there, phone in hand, his expression caught between fury and vindication. He knows, Adrian said. Her pulse kicked up. How? One of the fictional clients. Victor's team tried to set up a meeting and discovered the contact number routes to a disconnected line. Then they tried another. Same result. Adrian's smile was sharp enough to cut. He's been calling the entire VIP list for the past hour. They're all ghosts. Evelyn stood, her mind already racing ahead. So he knows the client database was false, but does he know about the rest? He's about to. Adrian gestured for her to follow him into his office. I just got word that he tried to move on the Morrison deal based on your projected timeline. Except the timeline was off by 3 weeks, and his approach triggered the breach clause you buried in the contract. The one that invalidates his position if there's third-party interference? That's the one. Morrison's legal team is threatening litigation. Adrian pulled up an email chain on his computer, and Evelyn scanned it quickly. Victor's lawyers were scrambling, trying to explain away the premature contact as a misunderstanding. But it was too late. Morrison was furious, and worse, suspicious. The kind of suspicion that would make them look more closely at any future acquisition attempts. He's burning bridges, Evelyn said. Every move he makes based on the false intelligence is damaging his credibility. And he still doesn't know the worst part. Adrian pulled up another screen, financial records showing Victor's recent asset movements. He liquidated holdings to prepare for the timeline you gave him, converted everything to cash at precisely the wrong moment. The market shifted 3 days ago. He's lost almost $200 million in potential gains. Evelyn's breath caught. $200 million, the cost of confidence, of believing he'd already won. When will he figure out it was all false? She asked. My guess? He already has. He's just confirming the scope of it. Adrian's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, and his expression hardened. And there it is. Victor just requested an emergency meeting. Tonight. Says it's urgent. With you? With both of us. Adrian turned the phone so she could read the message. He specifically asked for you to be there. Says we need to discuss recent misunderstandings and find a path forward. The words were diplomatic, but Evelyn heard the threat beneath them. Victor knew he'd been played, and he wanted to confront the people who'd done it. Could be a trap, she said. Definitely a trap. Adrian was already texting his security team. But also an opportunity. If Victor wants to meet face-to-face, it means he's desperate. Desperate people make mistakes. Or desperate people do dangerous things. That too. Adrian looked up from his phone, his eyes serious. You don't have to go. I can meet him alone. Not a chance. Evelyn moved to stand in front of him. We're partners, remember? We face this together. Evelyn, no. You don't get to protect me by pushing me away. Not now. Not after everything we've done. She held his gaze. Victor called for both of us. He wants to see my face when he confronts us. Wants to try to intimidate me or threaten me or whatever he thinks will work. And I'm going to look him in the eye and show him that I'm not afraid. Adrian's hands framed her face, his thumbs brushing across her cheekbones. You're the bravest person I've ever met. Or the most stubborn. Both. He kissed her, soft and fierce. We go together, but we do it smart. Full security detail, public location, recording everything. Where does he want to meet? Adrian checked the message again. His office. Top floor of Calder Holdings. Evelyn's stomach tightened. Victor's territory. His home ground where he'd have every advantage. Absolutely not, Adrian said, already typing a response. Neutral location or nothing. I'm suggesting the conference room at Hartley & Associates. It's our lawyer's building. Secure? Professional. And they already have recording equipment set up for depositions. The response came back within seconds. Victor agreed. Which meant he was either confident enough not to care about the location or desperate enough to accept any terms. Evelyn suspected it was both. They spent the next 3 hours preparing. Adrian's legal team briefed them on strategy, on what to say and what not to say, on how to document everything in case it ended up in court. The security team mapped out routes and escape plans and positioned people at every entrance to the building. By the time they climbed into the car at 7 p.m., Evelyn felt like she was preparing for war. Maybe she was. The drive to the lawyer's office was silent. Adrian held her hand, his thumb tracing circles on her palm, the only outward sign of the tension coiling through him. Evelyn watched the city lights blur past and tried to steady her breathing. This was it. The confrontation they'd been building toward since those roses had arrived on her desk. The moment when Victor would finally understand that he'd lost, and they'd find out what a desperate, angry man was capable of. The law office was in a sleek high-rise in Midtown, all glass and steel and expensive minimalism. Adrian's security team was already positioned when they arrived. 2 in the lobby, 2 more in the hallway outside the conference room, and Marcus, the head of security, stationed in an adjacent room monitoring the feeds. He's already here, Marcus said quietly. Arrived 10 minutes ago with 2 people. His lawyer and someone we haven't identified yet. Show me, Adrian said. Marcus pulled up the surveillance feed. Victor sat at the conference table, immaculate in a tailored suit, his expression controlled. Beside him was a woman in her 50s that Evelyn recognized as one of the city's most aggressive corporate litigators. And on Victor's other side sat a man in his 30s with the kind of military bearing that screamed private security. He brought muscle, Evelyn said. So did we. Adrian nodded to Marcus. Anything happens that even looks like a threat, you move in immediately. Yes, sir. Adrian took Evelyn's hand, squeezing once. Ready? Ready? They walked into the conference room together, and Victor's eyes tracked them with predatory focus. He stood as they entered, every inch the polished businessman, but Evelyn could see the fury simmering beneath his controlled exterior. Adrian. Evelyn. Victor's smile didn't reach his eyes. Thank you for meeting with me on such short notice. You said it was urgent. Adrian took a seat across from Victor, and Evelyn sat beside him. Partners, equals, exactly what they'd agreed. What's this about, Victor? I think you know what this is about. Victor's veneer of politeness cracked slightly. Shall we dispense with the games, or are we going to pretend that you didn't orchestrate one of the most elaborate deceptions I've encountered in 20 years of business? I have no idea what you're talking about, Adrian said mildly. Victor's lawyer leaned forward. Mr. Vale, we have documentation that suggests Ms. Carter provided my client with confidential information from your company, information that has subsequently proven to be completely fabricated. That's a serious accusation, Adrian said. Do you have proof that the information came from me or my company? The lawyer's expression tightened. Ms. Carter signed a contract acknowledging the transfer of proprietary intelligence. I signed a contract saying I'd provide information, Evelyn said, keeping her voice level. I never specified that the information would be accurate. If Mr. Calder made business decisions without properly vetting his sources, that's not my responsibility. Victor's hands flattened on the table. You deliberately sabotaged my acquisition strategy. I provided you with data you requested. What you did with that data was your choice. Evelyn met his gaze without flinching. Besides, the contract you signed with me is separate from any relationship between Calder Holdings and Vale Industries. If you have a legal claim, it's against me personally, not Adrian's company. She watched Victor's lawyer absorb that, saw the woman's expression shift as she realized the trap they'd walked into. Evelyn had structured everything carefully, accepting money from Victor for information that technically belonged to her, not Vale Industries, since she'd created the false documents herself. Even if Victor sued, the worst-case scenario was that Evelyn would have to return the $5 million. Money she'd never touched. Money that was still sitting in the escrow account, waiting to be returned with interest. You played me, Victor said quietly, his eyes on Evelyn. From the moment you sat down at that cafe, you were playing me. I made a business decision, Evelyn corrected, just like you did when you sent those roses to my office, when you tried to manipulate me into betraying the person I'm loyal to. You thought everyone had a price. Turns out you were wrong. $5 million, that was my offer. And you threw it away for what? Loyalty? Victor's laugh was bitter. To a man who keeps you invisible? Who treats you like a tool? You're wrong about that, Adrian said, his voice deadly quiet. You're wrong about everything, but especially about Evelyn. She's not invisible. She's the most important person in my life. And the fact that you couldn't see that you thought she'd betray me for money, shows exactly why you'll never understand what actually makes people loyal. Victor's attention snapped to Adrian. Spare me the sermon about loyalty from the man who inherited everything while I got nothing. You got plenty. You got a company, resources, opportunities. You chose to waste them on revenge instead of building something real. Adrian leaned forward. This isn't about our father anymore, Victor. This is about you being unable to accept that some of us moved on, that some of us chose to create instead of destroy. You self-righteous... Victor cut himself off, visibly reining in his temper. You sabotaged my acquisition, cost me hundreds of millions in losses, damaged my relationships with key players. You think that's not going to have consequences? What I think, Adrian said carefully, is that you made poor business decisions based on intelligence you didn't properly verify. That's not sabotage. That's incompetence. Victor's security guard shifted, and immediately Marcus was in the room, his hand on his weapon. The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. Everyone stay calm, Adrian's lawyer said firmly. This is a business discussion, not a confrontation. But it was both, and everyone knew it. Victor raised a hand, signaling his guard to stand down. Marcus retreated but didn't leave the room. "Let's be clear about something," Victor said, his voice like ice. "You may have won this round, but this isn't over, not by a long shot. I will find another way to take what should have been mine from the beginning." "No, you won't." Adrian's voice was absolute. "Because I'm done playing defense. I'm done waiting for you to make your next move. As of today, I'm going on offense." Victor's eyes narrowed. "What does that mean?" "It means I've spent the last 6 days not just protecting my company, but investigating yours." Adrian pulled out a tablet, turning it so Victor could see the screen. "These are transactions from Calder Holdings over the past 6 months. Specifically, transactions that violate about 17 different financial regulations." Evelyn watched the color drain from Victor's face. "You've been using shell companies to hide debt," Adrian continued, "misrepresenting your liquidity to investors. And most interesting, you've been engaging in insider trading through third-party accounts you think can't be traced back to you." Victor's lawyer went very still. "Mr. Vale, if you're making accusations of criminal activity, I'm not making accusations. I'm presenting facts." Adrian pulled up another screen. "These documents have already been delivered to the SEC and the FBI. They're opening formal investigations, plural." The room went silent except for the hum of the air conditioning. Victor stared at the screen, then at Adrian, his expression cycling through shock, fury, and something that might have been fear. "You're bluffing," he finally said. "Call the SEC tomorrow. Ask them about case file 2026-8847. Adrian's smile was cold. "Or better yet, wait for them to call you. Should be any day now." Evelyn felt a surge of fierce pride. While she'd been focused on the false intelligence plan, Adrian had been building a completely separate trap, not just protecting himself, but gathering evidence to take Victor down permanently. "This is revenge," Victor said. "Pure revenge." "No, this is justice." Adrian stood and Evelyn stood with him. "You've spent decades breaking rules and hurting people because you thought your resentment justified anything. It doesn't. And now you're going to face the consequences." "I'll fight this. I have resources, lawyers. I'll tie this up in courts for years." "You're welcome to try. But the evidence is solid. And while you're busy defending yourself against federal investigators, you won't have time or resources to come after me or anyone I care about." Adrian's gaze was granite. "We're done, Victor. This war you've been fighting, it's over. And you lost." Victor stood slowly, his control finally fracturing. "You think you've won? You think exposing some financial irregularities is going to destroy me? I think it's going to keep you so occupied with your own survival that you won't have energy for anything else." Adrian moved toward the door. "You won't. And if you ever come near Evelyn again, if you ever even think about retaliating against her, I will bury you so deep that no lawyer in the world will be able to dig you out. Are we clear?" Victor's jaw worked. "Crystal." "Good." Adrian held the door open for Evelyn. "Enjoy your investigations." They walked out together, leaving Victor and his lawyer to absorb the wreckage of their plans. In the hallway, Evelyn's hands started shaking with delayed adrenaline. Adrian noticed immediately, pulling her into an empty office and wrapping his arms around her. "You were perfect," he said against her hair. "So strong, so steady. I thought he might actually attack you when you showed him those documents. So did Marcus. Why do you think he stayed in the room?" Adrian pulled back to see her face. "But it's over, Evelyn. Really over. The SEC investigation is real. The evidence is solid. Victor's going to spend the next 5 years fighting to stay out of prison. He won't have time to come after us." "You've been planning this the whole time," she said, understanding dawning. "The false intelligence was just misdirection. The real plan was always the investigation. The false intelligence kept him busy and made him sloppy, made him make mistakes that led me to the evidence I needed." Adrian's smile was satisfied. "He thought he was the only one who could play chess. Turns out, I learned from the same bastard he did." Evelyn kissed him, hard and triumphant. "Remind me never to underestimate you." "Same. You were the one who convinced him you were actually considering his offer. Without that, none of this works." They stood there for a moment, wrapped in each other, letting the victory sink in. It was over. The threat that had hung over them for weeks, the danger that had transformed everything, the battle that had forced them to finally be honest about what they meant to each other, it was finished. Marcus appeared in the doorway. Calder and his people just left the building. Want us to follow them? No need. Adrian released Evelyn reluctantly. Let him go. He's not our problem anymore. They made their way down to the car, and for the first time in what felt like forever, Evelyn could breathe without anxiety, tightening her chest. The drive back to Adrian's penthouse was quiet but comfortable. Evelyn watched the city lights and thought about how much had changed in such a short time. 2 weeks ago, she'd been invisible, content to live in Adrian's shadow. Now she was his partner in every way that mattered. What are you thinking? Adrian asked. That I should probably look for a new job. She turned to face him. I can't exactly be your assistant anymore. Not after everything. No, you can't. Adrian's expression was serious, which is why I talked to the board yesterday. They approved a new position, Chief Operating Officer, equal authority to me on all operational decisions, full partnership track. Evelyn's breath caught. Adrian, you've earned it. Not because of us, but because you're brilliant at what you do. The board sees it. I see it. The only person who didn't see it was you. He took her hand. Say yes. Yes. The word came out choked with emotion. Yes, absolutely yes. Good. You start Monday. We'll need to hire a new assistant, restructure some reporting lines, but Evelyn kissed him, stopping the planning mid-sentence. Can we not talk about work for 5 minutes? 5 whole minutes? That's asking a lot. Try. Adrian pulled her closer, his arms wrapping around her. Okay, no work talk. What do you want to talk about? Us. What happens now that we're not in crisis mode? We figure out how to be together without everything being an emergency, Adrian said. We go on actual dates. We tell people we're together instead of hiding it. We build something that isn't defined by fighting Victor or protecting the company. That sounds nice. It does. He pressed a kiss to her temple. Though I have to warn you, I'm probably going to be terrible at it. I've spent so long in crisis mode that normal might feel weird. We'll figure it out together. That seems to be our specialty. They arrived at the penthouse, and for the first time it felt like coming home instead of hiding in a fortress. Adrian poured wine while Evelyn kicked off her heels, and they settled on the couch overlooking the city. Can I ask you something? Evelyn said after a while. Anything. The evidence against Victor. How long have you been gathering it? Adrian was quiet for a moment. 3 years? Since the tech startup deal where he played me. I knew he'd come after me again. So I started documenting everything, every shady transaction, every regulatory violation, building a case in case I ever needed it. That's incredibly patient. That's survival. He looked at her. Victor taught me that the best defense is overwhelming offense. You don't wait for your enemy to attack. You make sure they're too busy defending themselves to come after you. It's ruthless. It's effective. Adrian's expression softened. But I wouldn't have used it if he hadn't threatened you. The moment he sent those roses, the moment he made you a target, he crossed a line. Everything that happened after that was his choice. Evelyn understood. This had never really been about the company or money or even their father's favoritism. It had been about Victor threatening the one thing Adrian cared about more than business. Her. What do you think happens to him? She asked. Victor, I mean. If the investigation is as solid as you say. Best case for him? He settles with the SEC, pays massive fines, gets banned from running a public company for a decade. Adrian swirled his wine. Worst case? Criminal charges. Prison time. Complete destruction of everything he built. And you're okay with that? I'm okay with him facing consequences for his actions. For once in his life. Adrian met her eyes. He spent 30 years breaking rules and hurting people because he thought his grievances justified anything. They don't. And I'm done letting him get away with it. Evelyn nodded slowly. She couldn't argue with that logic, even if part of her felt a flicker of pity for the wounded child Victor must have been before he became the vengeful man. But pity didn't mean excusing what he'd done. So what now? She asked. We just live our lives, go to work, come home. Be normal? We try. Adrian's smile was crooked, though I suspect normal might be challenging for two people who just took down a corporate rival using elaborate counterintelligence operations. We could try anyway. We could. He set down his wine glass and pulled her closer. Starting right now. No crisis, no emergency. Just you and me and figuring out what this looks like when we're not fighting for survival. Evelyn settled against him, feeling the steady rhythm of his heartbeat beneath her cheek. I like this version better. Me too. They stayed like that for a long time, wrapped in each other, watching the city lights twinkle below. Tomorrow they'd go back to work, back to the complicated reality of being partners in both business and life. They'd face questions and gossip and all the messy logistics of their new arrangement. But tonight, they were just two people who'd chosen each other against all odds, who'd fought for what mattered and won, who'd proven that loyalty and love were more powerful than money or revenge or decades of resentment. 3 weeks later, Evelyn walked into the board meeting as Chief Operating Officer of Vale Industries for the first time. She'd spent the interim period transitioning responsibilities, hiring her replacement as Adrian's assistant, and learning the full scope of her new role. It was terrifying and exhilarating, and exactly what she'd been ready for without knowing it. Adrian sat at the head of the table, and when she entered, his eyes tracked her with pride and something warmer. The board members greeted her with respect, real respect, not the perfunctory acknowledgement she'd gotten as an assistant. She'd earned her place here, not because of her relationship with Adrian, but because she was brilliant at what she did. The meeting covered quarterly results, strategic initiatives, and upcoming acquisitions. Evelyn presented her operational efficiency analysis, fielding questions with confidence. She was good at this. She'd always been good at this. Now she just had the title to match. Afterward, as the board members filed out, the CFO paused beside her chair. "Welcome to the executive team, Ms. Carter. You're going to be a tremendous asset." "Thank you. I'm looking forward to it." When everyone had left, Adrian came around the table to where she stood gathering her notes. "You were brilliant," he said. "I was prepared." She smiled. "You taught me that." "I taught you systems. You brought the genius." He glanced toward the door, then back at her. "How does it feel, being COO?" "Like I can finally breathe." Evelyn set down her tablet. "Like I'm not pretending to be smaller than I am anymore." "Good. Because I have plans for you." "Professional plans?" "Both kinds." His smile turned wicked. "But first, the professional ones. I want to start expanding internationally. Asia-Pacific market. You'd lead the initiative." Evelyn's heart raced. "That's enormous." "You can handle it. I've watched you handle impossible things with grace. This is just the next challenge." He moved closer. "What do you say?" "I say yes, obviously." "Good. We'll start planning next week." Adrian's hand found hers. "Now for the personal plans." "I'm listening." "Move in with me. Officially. Not because of security threats or corporate warfare, because I want to wake up next to you every morning and come home to you every night." Evelyn's throat tightened. "You're sure? That's not too fast?" "We've known each other for 2 years. We've been in love for at least half that time, even if we didn't admit it. And we've survived a baptism by fire that would have destroyed most relationships before they started." Adrian cupped her face. "If that's not enough foundation, I don't know what is." "When you put it that way," Evelyn smiled. "Yes, absolutely yes." He kissed her then, right there in the conference room, in the heart of the empire they defended together. 6 months later, Evelyn stood in Adrian's penthouse, reading the news on her tablet while he made coffee. The headline made her pause. "Victor pleaded guilty," she said. Adrian looked up from the espresso machine. "To which charges?" "Securities fraud and insider trading. He's getting 5 years, banned from any executive position for life, and has to forfeit almost everything." She scanned the article. "Calder Holdings is being dissolved. Assets sold to cover fines and restitution." Adrian was quiet for a moment, processing. "How do you feel about that?" "Honestly, relieved. It means he's really finished, can't come after us again." Evelyn set down the tablet. "Is it wrong that I don't feel bad for him?" "No, he made his choices. This is just consequences." Adrian brought her coffee, wrapping his arms around her from behind. "Besides, we gave him opportunities to stop, to move on. He chose revenge every time." "Do you think he'll ever understand that the thing he wanted most, destroying you, was never going to make him happy?" "Probably not. Victor's too invested in his narrative of being wronged. Accepting that he created his own downfall would require more self-awareness than he's capable of. Adrian pressed a kiss to her neck. But that's not our problem anymore. Evelyn leaned back against him, feeling the solid warmth of his presence. He was right. Victor was the past. What mattered was the future they were building. A future where she wasn't invisible, where love wasn't weakness, where choosing loyalty over self-interest wasn't naive. It was the strongest choice of all. Her phone buzzed with a reminder about the afternoon's executive meeting. The Asia-Pacific expansion was moving forward faster than anticipated, and she had presentations to finalize. "Ready for today?" Adrian asked, reading over her shoulder. "Always." She turned in his arms. "Though I'm starting to suspect you gave me this project as a test." "Not a test, an opportunity. There's a difference." "Is there really?" "Yes. A test is something you can fail. An opportunity is something you make successful through sheer force of will and brilliance." His eyes were warm. "And you've never met a challenge you couldn't master." Evelyn kissed him, soft and sure. "Flattery will get you everywhere. I'm counting on it." They finished their coffee and headed to the office together, side by side like they'd always meant to be. The staff had stopped whispering about their relationship months ago, accepting it as simply the way things were. The CEO and COO who'd saved the company from destruction. The partners who'd proven that trust was more valuable than any acquisition. The couple who'd fought their way through crisis and come out stronger. At lunch, Evelyn's phone rang with an unknown number. She almost ignored it, but something made her answer. "Miss Carter?" An unfamiliar woman's voice. "This is Jennifer Martinez from the Women in Business Foundation. I'm calling because we'd like to feature you in our upcoming publication on rising female executives." Evelyn's breath caught. "I'm sorry, what?" "Your story is exactly what we highlight. Women who've navigated male-dominated industries and broken through to executive leadership. We'd love to interview you about your journey from assistant to COO." For a moment, Evelyn couldn't speak. 2 years ago, this call would have been impossible. She'd been so invisible that no one would have thought to feature her anywhere. Now she was someone worth interviewing, someone with a story worth telling. "I'd be honored," she said. After the call ended, she sat at her desk staring at nothing, letting it sink in. Everything had changed, not just her title or her salary or her relationship status. Her entire sense of who she was and what she deserved. Adrian appeared in her doorway. "Everything okay? You look dazed." "I just got asked to be in a feature about successful women in business." His smile was radiant. "Of course you did. You're incredible." She struggled for words. 2 years ago, I was nobody. And now, you were never nobody." Adrian crossed to her desk, leaning against it. "You were always exactly this person. The world just finally caught up to what I've known all along." Evelyn stood, moving into his space. "You know what the best part is?" "What?" "I didn't have to become someone else to get here. I just had to stop hiding who I already was." She wrapped her arms around his waist. "Thank you for seeing me when I couldn't see myself. Thank you for being worth seeing." He kissed her forehead. "And for saving my company, destroying my enemy, and generally being the most extraordinary person I've ever met." "Is that all?" she teased. "Also for loving me despite my control issues and paranoia and tendency to turn everything into a military operation. Those are actually endearing qualities. You're definitely the only person who thinks so." They stood there for a moment, wrapped in each other, letting the weight of everything they'd survived and built settle over them. The roses that had started it all felt like ancient history now. What remained was something real and tested and absolutely worth every moment of danger they'd faced to protect it. That evening, they had dinner with Adrian's executive team, a celebration of the quarter's record profits and successful expansion initiatives. Evelyn sat at the table as an equal, contributing ideas and challenging assumptions and being heard, being seen. Afterward, walking back to the car, Adrian took her hand. "I have something for you," he said. "Another project? Because I'm pretty maxed out on initiatives right now." "Not a project." He stopped under a streetlight, reaching into his jacket. "A question." Evelyn's heart stopped as he pulled out a small velvet box. "We've done everything backwards," Adrian said, opening the box to reveal a ring that caught the light and shattered it into rainbows. Crisis first, then partnership, then love. But I wouldn't change any of it, because it proved something important. What? Her voice came out barely a whisper. That we choose each other every day, in every way, not because it's easy or safe or convenient, but because it's right. He took her hand. Marry me, Evelyn. Be my wife, my partner, my co-conspirator in building something that lasts. Choose me, one more time, permanently. Tears blurred her vision. Yes, God, yes, absolutely yes. Adrian slipped the ring onto her finger, then pulled her into a kiss that tasted like promise and future and everything they'd fought so hard to protect. When they broke apart, Evelyn looked at the ring, elegant and understated and perfect, just like everything else Adrian had ever given her. I love you, she said. I love you too. He rested his forehead against hers. From the first day you walked into my office and reorganized my entire filing system without asking permission. Now, that was presumptuous of me. That was perfect. You saw what needed fixing and you fixed it, just like you've been doing ever since. They made their way home, truly home now, the penthouse that had been a fortress becoming a sanctuary. The city spread out below them, full of possibilities and challenges and adventures yet to come. But they'd face them together. Partners in every sense of the word. Equals who'd chosen each other against all odds. Two people who'd proven that love wasn't a weakness to exploit. It was the strongest foundation anyone could build on. Somewhere across the city, Victor Calder was preparing for prison, his empire dismantled, his revenge unfulfilled. But Adrian and Evelyn weren't thinking about him anymore. They were too busy planning a future that had nothing to do with old wounds or bitter rivalries or the ghosts of painful pasts. They were building something new, something real, something that had started with suspicion and danger and a bouquet of blood-red roses, but had transformed into something infinitely more valuable. A partnership forged in fire, a love tested by crisis, a choice made every single day, no matter the cost. And as Evelyn stood at the window beside the man she'd chosen, wearing his ring and carrying his heart, she knew with absolute certainty that she'd made the right decision. Not just once, in that cafe when she'd handed over false intelligence, but every moment before and after, in choosing to be seen instead of invisible, in choosing loyalty over money, in choosing love over safety, in choosing Adrian Vale over every easier option, and in choosing to build a life that was hers, truly hers, instead of hiding in someone else's shadow. The roses that had started everything were long gone, but what they'd catalyzed would last forever. A love story that began with danger and ended with everything worth fighting for.